Narrator. She cleaned his offices in silence. He ruled from the top floor, two worlds that never spoke, until one desperate midnight call shattered every barrier between them. Cameron. What the hell is going on here, and who exactly gave you permission to touch my computer? Zaria. I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne. There was an emergency call from Singapore about a server breach. I used to study computer science, so I thought... Narrator. The woman he'd never noticed had just saved his billion-dollar empire. But when enemies discovered their connection, everything changed. Cameron. What you did tonight. Not many people could have done that. I want you in my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Zaria. People will say I slept my way into this job. We come from different worlds, Cameron. Narrator. A janitor with secrets, a CEO with everything to lose. When corporate enemies threaten to destroy them both, will love be enough to bridge the gap between their worlds? And can two hearts survive when billion-dollar empires hang in the balance? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. Zaria Monroe pulled her cleaning cart through the silent hallways of Thorne Tech Global. It was almost midnight, and the sleek glass offices that buzzed with activity during the day were now empty and dark. Just how she liked them. No executives looking through her, no assistants dropping coffee cups right after she'd mopped, just peace and quiet. At 28, Zaria had learned to find comfort in invisibility. Her dark blue uniform blended into the shadows as she moved from office to office, emptying trash cans and wiping down surfaces. 6 years of cleaning this building, and most people still didn't know her name. Just 2 more floors, she muttered to herself, pushing her cart toward the elevator. The executive level was always her last stop. Less mess up there, but more pressure. The executives' offices, with their expensive furniture and awards on display, were the most important to keep spotless. The elevator doors opened to the top floor. As she stepped out, Zaria plugged her earbuds in and turned on her music. Beyoncé's voice filled her ears as she began her routine. She hummed along while dusting the conference room table, losing herself in the rhythm. Outside, lightning flashed, followed by a crack of thunder that shook the windows. Rain pounded against the glass walls of the building. Zaria glanced out at the storm, the city lights blurred by sheets of water. Nights like this made her glad to be inside, even if it meant working when everyone else was home. She moved to the CEO's office, Cameron Thorne's space. She'd never met the man himself, their schedules never overlapped, but she knew his reputation. 30 years old and already a tech billionaire. Brilliant, ruthless, cold as ice, according to office gossip. His desk was immaculate, as always. The man was known for his precision. Zaria carefully dusted around his 3 computer monitors, making sure not to disturb any papers. Suddenly a phone rang, cutting through her music. She pulled out her earbuds, confused. It was almost midnight. Who would be calling the office? At this hour? The ringing continued. It wasn't coming from the desk phone, but from a smaller device on the credenza behind his desk. Zaria hesitated. She wasn't supposed to touch anything on the executives' desks, let alone answer their phones, but something about the late hour and the persistence of the ring made her uneasy. What if it was an emergency? After the 8th ring, she made her decision. She walked around the desk and picked up the phone. "Hello, Mr. Thorne's office," she said hesitantly. "Hello, hello?" The voice on the other end was male with a heavy accent. He sounded panicked. "This emergency. Need Mr. Thorne now?" "I'm sorry. Mr. Thorne isn't in the office right now. This is the cleaning staff. Can I take a message?" "No time, no time," the man shouted. "Server breach happening now. Offshore systems compromised. All contracts will collapse. Millions lost. Tell him now." Zaria's heart raced. "Sir, please slow down. What server breach?" "Main server. Security wall failing. Need reset code for Singapore backup." The connection crackled. 10 minutes before system crash. Zaria's mind shifted gears instantly. Before her mother's illness, before she dropped out of college, she'd been 3 years into a computer science degree. She'd been top of her class. "Sir, are you talking about a firewall breach on the main server?" Yes, you understand. Need help now." "What's your name?" "Who are you with?" Zaria asked, her mind racing. "Lee Kwan, Thorne Tech Singapore. Please, "You help," Zariah made a split-second decision. "Mr. Lee, hold on, I'm going to see what I can do." She glanced at Cameron Thorne's computer. The screens were dark, but she knew from cleaning the office that he never locked his computer when he left. A risky practice, but typical of executives who thought their offices were fortresses. With trembling fingers, she moved the mouse. The screens lit up, revealing dozens of windows and programs. She recognized most of them from her college days. "I shouldn't be doing this," she whispered to herself. But if what the man said was true, Thorne Tech could lose millions in the next few minutes. "Mr. Lee, are you still there?" she asked, putting the phone on speaker. "Yes, 7 minutes now. I need you to tell me exactly what's happening and which systems are affected." As he explained, Zariah's fingers flew across the keyboard. Years melted away as coding language flooded back to her. She navigated through security protocols, located the breach, and identified the failing systems. "I see it," she said, adrenaline surging through her veins. "The Singapore server is under attack. Someone's trying to access your contract database." "Yes. Can you stop it?" Zariah took a deep breath. "I'm going to try to divert the attack and reinforce the security wall." For the next 20 minutes, Zariah was completely absorbed in the task. She rerouted servers, created temporary firewalls, and managed to isolate the breach. With each successful step, Mr. Lee's panic subsided. "Amazing! You are saving us!" he exclaimed. "Who are you?" "Just someone who remembers a little about computers," Zariah said, her confidence growing as she worked. She hadn't felt this alive in years. This was the world she'd once belonged to, the path she'd been forced to abandon. Finally, she managed to secure the system and reset the connections to the Singapore office. "There," she said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "The breach has been contained, and I've restored your access to the main server. You should be able to—" The office door swung open. Zariah froze, her hands still on the keyboard. Cameron Thorne stood in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the hallway light. His usually perfect suit was drenched, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. His piercing blue eyes moved from Zariah to his computer screens and back again. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Before Zariah could answer, Mr. Lee's voice came through the speaker. "Mr. Thorne, this woman save everything. Hacker almost get contracts. She stopped them." Cameron's eyes narrowed as he walked slowly into the room. "And who exactly gave you permission to touch my computer, Miss Monroe?" "Zariah Monroe," she said, rising from his chair. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne. There was an emergency call from your Singapore office about a server breach. I used to study computer science, so I thought—" "You thought you'd just help yourself to the CEO's private terminal?" His voice was cold, but there was something else in his expression. Curiosity, perhaps. "I'm sorry, I'll clean out my locker." Zariah moved to leave, her heart sinking. 6 years of steady work gone in an instant. "Wait." Cameron held up his hand. He picked up the phone. "Lee, is what she's saying true? Was there a breach?" "Yes, sir, very bad. Without her, we lose everything. She very smart, very fast." Cameron's expression changed subtly. He put the phone down and studied Zariah more carefully. "You're a janitor." "I'm on the cleaning staff, yes," Zariah replied, lifting her chin slightly. "And you just happen to know how to navigate Thorne Tech's proprietary security systems?" I recognized the basic structure. The rest was just problem-solving. Cameron walked to his computer and examined the screens scrolling through the commands she'd entered. His eyebrows rose slightly. "This is advanced coding. Where did you learn this?" Zariah hesitated. "I was studying computer science at MIT before. I had to drop out." "MIT?" Cameron looked genuinely surprised. "Why did you drop out?" "My mother got sick. Cancer. Someone had to take care of her and my younger brother." Zariah glanced at the door, wishing she could just disappear. She didn't want this man's pity. Thunder rumbled outside as Cameron continued to examine her work on the computer. The silence stretched between them. Finally, he turned to face her. "You should have been fired the moment you touched this computer." Zariah nodded, her throat tight. "I know. Instead," he continued, "I want you in my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. She blinked in confusion. I don't work mornings. My shift starts at 6 p.m. Tomorrow you're not coming in as cleaning staff. I want to talk to you about a different position." His blue eyes held hers. "What you did tonight, not many people could have done that. Not even some of my top tech people." Zariah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a conversation," Cameron replied carefully. 9 a.m., don't be late." With that, he turned back to his computer, effectively dismissing her. Zariah gathered her cleaning supplies, her mind racing. As she pushed her cart to the elevator, she could feel Cameron watching her. The doors closed and she leaned against the wall, her heart pounding. What had just happened? Had she just saved a multi-million-dollar company from a security breach? Had Cameron Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Tech Global, just asked to meet with her? It didn't seem real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. The elevator reached the ground floor and Zariah stepped out, the storm still raging outside. As she clocked out and prepared to brave the rain, she couldn't help but wonder if tomorrow would change everything. The next morning, Zariah stood outside Thorne Tech's gleaming entrance, clutching her worn purse. She'd spent hours deciding what to wear, finally settling on the only business-appropriate outfit she owned, a simple black skirt and white blouse she'd bought for her mother's funeral last year. The security guard at the front desk did a double take when she gave her name. "Ms. Monroe? For Mr. Thorne?" he asked skeptically. "That's right," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. After a phone call, his attitude changed. "Go right up, Ms. Monroe. Mr. Thorne is expecting you." The morning elevator ride was entirely different from her usual evening one. Instead of being alone with her cleaning cart, she was surrounded by employees in expensive suits, all tapping on phones or tablets. No one looked at her directly, but she felt their curious glances. When the doors opened at the executive floor, Cameron's assistant was waiting for her. "Ms. Monroe, I'm Lisa. Mr. Thorne asked me to bring you straight in." Lisa led her through the open office area, past curious stairs, to the large glass-walled office at the end. Cameron was standing by the window, talking on his phone. When he saw Zariah, he ended his call and motioned for her to enter. "Close the door, please, Lisa," he said, "and hold my calls." Zariah stood awkwardly just inside the door as Cameron studied her. In daylight, she could see him more clearly. He was younger than she'd expected, with sharp features and intense blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Sit down, Ms. Monroe," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She sat, placing her purse carefully on the floor. Beside her, Cameron remained standing. "I spent most of the night reviewing what happened. The breach was real, sophisticated. If it had succeeded, we would have lost access to our entire Asian market contracts." He paused. "You saved this company millions of dollars." "I just did what needed to be done," Zariah said quietly. "That's exactly what interests me." Cameron finally sat down, leaning forward across his desk. "Most people would have let that phone ring. Most people wouldn't have known what to do even if they answered, but you did." He pulled a folder from his desk drawer. "I had HR pull your file this morning. 6 years with our cleaning service. Perfect attendance. No complaints. No recognition either." His eyes met hers. "And nothing about an MIT education." "It wasn't relevant to cleaning offices," Zariah replied. 3 years at one of the best computer science programs in the country. Then nothing." Cameron flipped through the pages. "Why didn't you try to get a job in tech after your mother passed?" "Away." Zariah stiffened. "How do you know about my mother?" "I make it my business to know things, Miss Monroe." His voice softened slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," she said automatically. "To answer your question, by the time my mother died, I'd been out of school for 3 years. My skills were outdated. I had my brother to take care. For this job had steady hours and health insurance." Cameron nodded slowly. "Practical decisions, I respect that." He closed the folder. "But now I have a proposition for you." Zariah waited, hardly daring to hope. "Thorne Tech has some sensitive systems that need attention, projects that require someone with both technical skills and discretion." Cameron leaned back in his chair. "I need someone who can work directly with me outside the normal corporate structure." "You want me to be your IT person?" Zariah asked, confused. Cameron smiled for the first time. a small quirk of his lips that transformed his face. Not exactly. I want you as a confidential consultant, working directly with me on projects that no one else at the company will know about. Zariah frowned. That sounds suspicious. To her surprise, Cameron laughed. It was a warm sound that didn't match his cold reputation. It's not illegal, if that's what you're worried about. Just sensitive. Corporate security, mainly. He named a salary that made Zariah's eyes widen, plus benefits, of course. Why me? She asked bluntly. You must have dozens of qualified people already working for you. I have hundreds, he corrected. But they all have something to prove. Ambitions, agendas. His blue eyes held hers. You just solved a problem because it needed solving. No glory, no recognition expected, that's rare. Zariah considered his words. It sounded too good to be true. And if I say no? Then you go back to your regular job with my thanks and a generous bonus for last night. Cameron shrugged. No pressure. Ms. Monroe, but there was pressure. The money he was offering would change everything for her and her brother, Marcus. They could move out of their tiny apartment. Marcus could go to a better school. She could finish her degree. When would I start? She asked cautiously. Immediately. Tonight, actually. I have a project that can't wait. Cameron stood up. Do. We have a deal. Zariah took a deep breath. Yes, we have a deal. Good. Cameron extended his hand and she shook it. His grip was firm, his hand warm against hers. Be here at 8 p.m. We'll need privacy for this first project. As Zariah left the office, she felt like she was in a dream. The same employees who had ignored her that morning now watched her curiously as she walked through the office. She heard whispers follow her to the elevator. Outside in the bright morning sun, Zariah pulled out her phone to call her brother. Marcus, you're not going to believe what just happened. By 7:45 that evening, Zariah was back at Thorntech, riding the elevator to the executive floor. She'd spent the day in a daze, shopping for more appropriate work clothes with money she didn't quite have yet, and explaining to her brother that everything was about to change. The office was quiet, with only a few employees working late. As she approached Cameron's office, she saw him through the glass walls, focused intently on his computer screen. She knocked lightly on the doorframe, and he looked up. Right on time, he said, gesturing for her to enter. Close the door. Zariah did as he asked, then stood uncertainly in front of his desk. Sit, he said, pointing to a chair he'd pulled up beside his own. I want to show you something. As she sat down, she was acutely aware of how close they were. Cameron's presence was intimidating, not just because he was her boss now, but because of the intensity he carried with him. What I'm about to show you doesn't leave this room, he said, his voice low. Not even to the board of directors, understand? Zariah nodded, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Cameron pulled up a series of files on his screen. These are reports of security breaches across our global offices over the past 6 months. Small incidents, seemingly unconnected. Until you look closer. He pointed to patterns in the data that Zariah immediately recognized as coordinated attacks. Someone's testing your defenses, she said, leaning closer to the screen. Looking for weaknesses. Cameron turned to look at her, their faces unexpectedly close. Exactly. The question is, who and why? For the next 3 hours, they worked side by side, analyzing data and strengthening security protocols. Zariah was surprised by how easily they fell into a rhythm, his strategic thinking complementing her technical skills. You're good at this, Cameron said at one point, watching her fingers fly across the keyboard. So are you, she replied, surprised, to find herself smiling. By midnight, they had implemented new security measures across all Thorntech systems. Cameron leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. I think that's enough for tonight, he said. Same time tomorrow? Zariah nodded, suddenly aware of how tired she was. As she gathered her things to leave, Cameron stopped her. Zariah, he said, using her first name for the first time. Thank you. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. You're welcome. Cameron. His name felt strange on her lips, but he smiled, another of those rare expressions that transformed his face. As Zariah rode the elevator down, she couldn't help but feel that her life had just taken a turn she never could have imagined. 24 hours ago, She'd been emptying trash cans in this building. Now she was working directly with the CEO on confidential projects. It didn't make sense. Men like Cameron Thorne didn't notice women like her. They certainly didn't hire them for important positions based on one night's work. There had to be more to it. But as she stepped out into the cool night air, Zariah decided that whatever his reasons, she would make the most of this opportunity. She had been given a second chance at the career she'd once dreamed, so she wouldn't waste it. What she didn't know was that upstairs, Cameron Thorne was still sitting at his desk, looking at her employee file photo on his screen, wondering about the quiet woman who had just upended his carefully controlled world. Over the next few weeks, Zariah and Cameron fell into a routine. Each night after the regular employees had gone home, they would work together on strengthening Thorntech's security systems. Their sessions often ran late into the night, fueled by coffee and the occasional takeout dinner. Zariah was surprised to discover that the cold, ruthless CEO of Office Gossip was actually thoughtful and even funny when they were alone. He listened to her ideas, challenged her thinking, and seemed genuinely interested in her opinions. "How did you end up running a tech empire at 30? She asked one night as they shared Chinese food at his desk. Cameron twirled noodles around his fork. "My father started the company. Everyone expected me to take over eventually, but not so soon." A shadow crossed his face. "He died in a car accident when I was 25. I had to step up." "I'm sorry," Zariah said softly. Cameron shrugged. "It was a long time ago." He changed the subject. "How's your brother adjusting to the new apartment?" Zariah smiled, thinking of the two-bedroom apartment they'd moved into the previous weekend. "He loves having his own room and being closer to his school." "He's 16, right? Junior in high school?" "Yes," Zariah said, surprised that Cameron had remembered. "He's smart, always has been. He wants to study engineering." "Like his sister," Cameron observed. "Better than his sister," Zariah corrected. "He won't have to drop out." Cameron studied her for a moment. "You could go back, you know. Finish your degree." Zariah looked down at her food. "Maybe someday." Their conversation was interrupted by a ping from the computer. Cameron turned to check it, frowning at what he saw. "Another attempt," he said, "this one targeting our R&D files." They immediately switched back to work mode, tracking the intrusion and shutting it down. It was nearly 2 a.m. when they finally stopped. "So you should go home," Cameron said, noticing Zariah stifling a yawn. "Get some sleep." "So should you," she replied, gathering her things. Cameron smiled wryly. "I never sleep much anyway." As Zariah waited for the elevator, she realized that despite the late hours and intense work, she was happier than she'd been in years. Not just because of the money, though that certainly helped, but because she was using her mind again. Being valued for her intelligence rather than her ability to clean floors. And if she was being honest with herself, there was something else too. Something about the way Cameron looked at her sometimes, when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Something that made her heart beat a little faster, but that was dangerous thinking. He was her boss, a billionaire. They lived in different worlds, and she would do well to remember that. The elevator doors opened, and Zariah stepped inside, pushing those thoughts away. This was a job, nothing more, nothing less. Behind her, through the glass walls of his office, Cameron watched her go, his expression unreadable in the dim light. The next morning, Cameron had just finished a board meeting when his assistant, Lisa, knocked on his door. "Mr. Thorne, Ms. Bradford is here to see you." Cameron frowned. "I don't have any appointments with legal today." "She says it's urgent," Lisa replied, looking uncomfortable. "Fine, send her in." Vanessa Bradford, head of Thorntech's legal department, entered the office with her usual confident stride. At 45, she was one of the few executives who had been with the company since his father's time. "Cameron, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "About your new consultant." Vanessa sat down without being invited. "There are rumors." Cameron's face hardened. "What kind of rumors?" "That you're spending an unusual amount of time alone with a former member of the cleaning staff, that you've given her access to sensitive company information." Vanessa leaned forward. "That there might be personal reasons for her sudden promotion." Cameron's blue eyes turned icy. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting, Vanessa?" I'm suggesting that it looks inappropriate regardless of the reality. She held his gaze. The board is concerned. The board can mind their own business, Cameron snapped. Ms. Monroe is exceptionally qualified for the work she's doing. A college dropout with no industry experience? Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Cameron, I've known you since you were a child. I'm trying to help you. This doesn't look good. Cameron stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. Thank you for your concern, Vanessa. It's noted. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. After she left, Cameron stood at his window, looking out at the city below. He knew the rumors. It would start eventually. He just hadn't expected them so soon. The truth was, he wasn't entirely sure why he'd acted so impulsively with Zariah. Yes, her skills were impressive. Yes, she'd saved the company from a potentially devastating breach, but there was something else about her that had caught his attention, a quiet strength, an integrity that was rare in his world. And now, he realized, he might have put her in a difficult position. The last thing he wanted was for people to think she had earned her position in any way other than through her abilities. He would have to be more careful. Keep their working relationship more professional. More distant. It was the right thing to do, even if the thought left him feeling strangely empty. That night, Zariah noticed the change as soon as she arrived. Cameron was formal, almost cold. He kept his distance, physically and emotionally, speaking only about the work. Around midnight, she couldn't take it anymore. Did I do something wrong? She asked bluntly. Cameron looked up, startled. What? No. Why would you think that? Because you've barely spoken to me all night, and when you do, it's like you're talking to a stranger. Cameron sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. It's not you, it's complicated. Try me, Zariah said, crossing her arms. I'm pretty good with complicated. He studied her for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. There are rumors about why I hired you. Understanding dawned on Zariah's face. Oh. I don't want to damage your reputation or make you uncomfortable. Cameron's voice was carefully neutral. I thought it would be better if we kept things strictly professional. Zariah felt a mix of emotions, anger at the rumors, appreciation for his concern, and something else she didn't want to examine too closely. I don't care what people think, she said finally. I know why I'm here. You know why I'm here. That's what matters. Cameron looked relieved. You're sure? I'm sure. Zariah smiled slightly. Now can we get back to work? The real way we work, not this awkward silent treatment. Cameron's answering smile made her heart skip a beat. Absolutely. As they returned to their project, the tension between them eased, but something had shifted. An acknowledgement, perhaps, that there was something growing between them that went beyond a professional relationship. Neither of them spoke of it, but it was there, in the way their hands sometimes brushed as they reached for the same file, in the way their eyes met and held for just a moment too long, a dangerous current, flowing beneath the surface of their carefully maintained professionalism, and neither of them knew just how deep it would take them. A month into her new position at Thorntech, Zariah was finally getting used to her transformed life. Her days now started later, giving her time to have breakfast with Marcus before he left for school. Her new salary meant they could afford fresh groceries and even occasional meals out, luxuries they hadn't enjoyed since before their mother got sick. So when do I get to meet your fancy boss? Marcus asked one morning as he shoveled cereal into his mouth. Zariah looked up from her coffee. What makes you think you need to meet him? Marcus grinned. You talk about him all the time. Cameron said this, Cameron thinks that. I do not, Zariah protested, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. Whatever you say, sis. Marcus grabbed his backpack. But you're different since you started working with him. Happier. He paused at the door. It's nice. After he left, Zariah sat at the kitchen table, thinking about her brother's words. Was she happier? Yes, definitely. But it wasn't just about the money or the work. It was about Cameron. Over the past month, they'd developed a rhythm, a partnership that felt natural despite their different backgrounds. During their late-night sessions, they'd shared stories and meals, laughed over inside jokes, and built something that felt dangerously close to friendship, maybe even something more. Zariah shook her head, clearing those thoughts away. She couldn't afford to romanticize her relationship with her boss. That was a path to disaster. She glanced at the clock and hurried to get ready. She had agreed to come in early today for a special project Cameron wanted to discuss. When she arrived at Thorntech, the receptionist greeted her by name, a far cry from the days when she'd been invisible. Employees nodded as she passed, some friendly, others curious, a few openly suspicious. Zariah had heard the whispers. The cleaning lady who'd caught the CEO's eye. She ignored them, focusing instead on proving herself. Through her work, Cameron was on the phone when she reached his office. He waved her in, his face lighting up with a smile that made her heart beat faster. She sat down across from him, trying to maintain a professional demeanor. "Yes, the presentation is ready," he was saying. "We'll see you at 2. He hung up and turned his attention to Zariah. "Good morning. Thanks for coming in early." "No problem. What's the special project?" Cameron leaned forward, excitement in his blue eyes. "I want you to attend the board meeting with me this afternoon." Zariah blinked in surprise. "The board meeting? Why?" "Because I'm presenting our new security protocols, and you designed half of them." Cameron's expression grew serious. "It's time the board understands exactly what you bring to this company." Zariah felt a flutter of panic. "I don't think that's a good idea. The board already has concerns about my position, which is exactly why you need to be there," Cameron insisted. "Once they see your expertise, those concerns will disappear." Zariah wasn't so sure. "They'll think I wrote the presentation for you." "You didn't. We wrote it together." Cameron's voice softened. "Zariah, I know what I'm asking, but I need you there. I trust your judgment more than anyone else's." The sincerity in his voice melted her resistance. "All right, I'll be there." "Great." He glanced at his watch. "The meeting's at 2. Until then, we have work to do." They spent the morning refining the presentation, their heads close together as they reviewed slides and practiced key points. By lunchtime, Zariah felt more confident about facing the board. "Let's grab lunch," Cameron suggested. "There's a great deli down the street." Zariah hesitated. They had never left the office together during business hours. Cameron seemed to read her thoughts. "We need to eat, and I need fresh air. The rumors will be there whether we have lunch together or not." He was right, of course, and yet, as they walked through the office together, Zariah was acutely aware of the stares following them. Outside, the October air was crisp and clear. Cameron led her to a small deli a few blocks away, where they ordered sandwiches and found a quiet table in the corner. "Tell me more about your brother," Cameron said as they ate. "You said he wants to study engineering?" Zariah smiled, relaxing into the conversation. "Yes, he's always been good with numbers. Better than me, actually. He's applying to colleges now, MIT, Caltech, Stanford." "Impressive," Cameron said. "What about financial aid?" Zariah's smile faded slightly. "We're hoping for scholarships. My new salary helps, but college is expensive." Cameron nodded thoughtfully, but didn't pursue the topic. Instead, he asked, "How is he handling everything? Your mother's passing, the changes in your life." "Marcus is resilient," Zariah said with pride. "He was younger when Mom got sick, but he grew up fast. He helped with her care, kept up with school, never complained." She paused, thinking. "Sometimes I worry that he missed out on being a kid." "You both did," Cameron observed quietly. Zariah looked up, surprised by his insight. Their eyes met, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Cameron cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "We should head back. The meeting's in an hour." As they returned to the office, Zariah noticed Cameron maintained a careful distance between them. She appreciated his discretion, even as part of her wondered what it would be like to close that distance. Back in his office, they made final preparations for the board meeting. Zariah changed into the jacket she'd brought for the occasion, a simple navy blazer that was the most professional item in her new wardrobe. "Ready?" Cameron asked as 2 o'clock approached. Zariah took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." The boardroom was intimidating, a long table of polished wood surrounded by stern-faced executives, most of them men in expensive suits. Zariah recognized a few faces from her cleaning days, though she doubted any of them recognized her. Cameron took his place at the head of the table, gesturing for Zariah to sit in the empty chair to his right. A murmur went through the room. Good afternoon, everyone, Cameron began. Today we're discussing the new security protocols implemented over the past month. As you know, we've experienced several targeted attacks on our systems. I've brought Ms. Monroe to assist with the presentation, as she's been instrumental in designing our new defenses. Vanessa Bradford, the legal director, spoke up. Is that really necessary, Cameron? This is typically a closed meeting. Ms. Monroe has the highest security clearance, Cameron replied smoothly, and her expertise is relevant to today's discussion. Zariah felt Vanessa's eyes on her, assessing and cold. She straightened her spine and met the older woman's gaze. Presentation began, with Cameron outlining the threats they'd faced. When it came time to explain the technical aspects of the new security system, he turned to Zariah. Ms. Monroe will walk you through the specifics. Zariah stood, fighting to keep her voice steady as she began her explanation. At first, the board members looked skeptical, but as she delved into the technical details with confidence and clarity, their expressions changed. Some leaned forward with interest, others took notes. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the questions began. Zariah answered each one knowledgeably, her initial nervousness giving way to the quiet confidence that came from truly understanding her subject. By the end of the meeting, even Vanessa seemed reluctantly impressed. "Thank you, Ms. Monroe," said Richard Webb, the eldest board member. "That was most enlightening. Cameron, I see why you've brought her on board." As they left the boardroom, Cameron placed a hand briefly on Zariah's shoulder. "You were brilliant," he said softly. The warmth of his touch lingered long after he removed his hand. Back in his office, Cameron was jubilant. "Did you see their faces? You won them over completely," Zariah laughed, his enthusiasm infectious. "I wouldn't go that far. Vanessa still looked like she'd swallowed a lemon." "Vanessa always looks like that," Cameron said dismissively. "The important thing is they respect you now. They see your value to the company." "Thanks to you," Zariah said, "for giving me the chance to show them." Cameron's smile faded into something more serious. "I didn't give you anything, Zariah. You earned it." The intensity in his eyes made her look away. "I should go check on the system updates we started this morning." Cameron nodded, allowing her the retreat. "Of course. See you tonight?" "As always," she replied, grateful for the return to their routine. But as she walked back to her small office down the hall, Zariah knew that nothing about their relationship felt routine anymore. Each day, each night spent working side by side, was pulling them closer to a line she wasn't sure they should cross. The question was, did she have the strength to step back before it was too late? That evening, Marcus was at a friend's house, studying, giving Zariah time to prepare for her night shift with Cameron. She chose her outfit more carefully than usual, settling on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out the warm brown of her eyes. "It's just work," she told her reflection sternly. "Stop overthinking it." But her stomach fluttered with anticipation as she drove to Thorntech. The building was quiet when she arrived, most employees gone for the day. Light spilled from Cameron's office at the end of the hall, a beacon guiding her forward. He looked up when she entered, his tired smile sending a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the office temperature. "You look nice," he said, then immediately seemed to regret the comment. "I mean, shall we get started?" Zariah hid a smile as she took her usual seat beside him. "What are we working on tonight?" "I want to check the Singapore connection again. Lee reported some anomalies this morning. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the clicking of keyboards and the soft hum of the computers. Outside, the city lights twinkled against the darkening sky. Around 9, Cameron stretched and stood up. "I need coffee. You?" "Please," Zariah replied, not looking up from her screen. He returned a few minutes later with 2 steaming mugs. "Any progress?" "Maybe. Look at this pattern." She pointed to a sequence of code on her screen. "It's subtle, but there's definitely something there." Cameron leaned over her shoulder to see better, his chest almost touching her back. Zariah was suddenly very aware of his proximity, the scent of his cologne, the warmth radiating from his body. "I see it," he said, his voice close to her ear. "Good catch." Neither of them moved for a moment, frozen in a tableau of almost touching. Then Cameron straightened, clearing his throat. Let's trace it back, see where it originated. The tension in the room was palpable as they returned to work, both pretending nothing had happened. But something had. A boundary had been approached, even if not crossed. An hour later, they had tracked the anomaly to its source, a seemingly innocent software update that contained hidden malware. It's sophisticated, Zariah said, impressed despite herself. Whoever designed this knows our systems well. Too well, Cameron agreed grimly. This has to be an inside job. Zariah frowned. You think someone at Thorntech is behind the attacks? It's the only explanation that makes sense. Cameron ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Zariah had come to recognize as a sign of frustration. The question is who and why. Could it be industrial espionage, a competitor trying to steal your technology? Possibly. Cameron's expression was troubled. But these attacks aren't just trying to steal information. They're trying to damage our systems, destroy data. It feels personal. Zariah hesitated, then asked, Have you made any enemies lately? Cameron gave a short, humorless laugh. I make enemies every day in this business, but someone who hates me enough to try to destroy my company. He shook his head. I don't know. The vulnerability in his voice tugged at Zariah's heart. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her hand over his. We'll figure it out. Together. Cameron looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. Something shifted in his eyes, a decision being made. Slowly, deliberately, he turned, his hand over so that their palms met, fingers intertwining. The simple contact sent electricity up Zariah's arm. Zariah, he said softly, her name a question and an answer all at once. The ringing of his phone shattered the moment. Cameron withdrew his hand reluctantly and answered the call. Thorne speaking. His expression changed as he listened. When? How bad? I'll be right there. He hung up and turned to Zariah, all business again. There's been a fire at one of our server facilities. I need to go. I'll come with you, Zariah said immediately. Cameron hesitated, then nodded. Let's go. The drive to the facility across town was tense, both of them lost in thought. When they arrived, emergency vehicles surrounded the building, their lights painting the night in red and blue. A security guard recognized Cameron and waved them through. Inside, technicians were assessing the damage while firefighters finished their work. The head of facility security approached them. Mr. Thorne, thank you for coming so quickly. What happened, Johnson? Cameron asked. Initial assessment suggests electrical fire, but... Johnson lowered his voice. There are some irregularities. The sprinkler system failed to activate, and the backup generators didn't kick in. That's not a coincidence, Cameron said grimly. No, sir. We're treating it as potential sabotage. Cameron turned to Zariah. I need to see the damage. Will you check the main control systems? See if you can find any tampering in the software. Zariah nodded, following a technician to the control room while Cameron went with Johnson to inspect the damaged servers. The control room was untouched by the fire, banks of monitors showing the status of the facility. Zariah sat at the main terminal and began searching through the system logs. What she found confirmed their fears. The fire hadn't been an accident. Someone had remotely accessed the system, disabled the safety protocols, and then triggered an electrical surge in a specific server bank. When Cameron joined her an hour later, his face was grim, smudges of soot on his usually immaculate suit. How bad? She asked. We lost a full server bank. Critical R&D data. He looked exhausted. Please tell me you found something. Zariah showed him the evidence of tampering. The attack came from inside our network. Whoever did this has high-level access. Cameron's expression hardened. This ends now. I want you to help me set a trap. What kind of trap? We're going to create a honeypot. Fake R&D files that look important but contain tracking code. When someone accesses them, we'll know exactly who it is. They spent the rest of the night at the facility, working with the security team to salvage what data they could and implement Cameron's plan. It was nearly dawn when they finally left. In the car, Cameron looked over at Zariah. I'm sorry about tonight. This isn't what you signed up for. Actually, it kind of is, she replied with a tired smile. Confidential consultant, remember, for sensitive projects. Cameron smiled back, though strain still showed around his eyes. Still, it's been a long night. I'll drop you home. As they drove through the quiet, early morning streets, Zariah found herself studying Cameron's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the weariness in his posture. Despite his wealth and power, in that moment he seemed vulnerable, alone with the weight of his responsibilities. When they reached her apartment building, Cameron insisted on walking her to the door, ever the gentleman despite his exhaustion. "Get some rest," he said as they reached her apartment. "Take the day off tomorrow." "Are you taking the day off?" she challenged. "That's different. It's my company. And it's my job to help you protect it," Zariah countered. "I'll see you tomorrow, Cameron. Regular time." He smiled, shaking his head slightly. "You're stubborn, you know that." "So I've been told," she replied, returning his smile. They stood there for a moment, neither wanting to leave. The hallway was quiet, the early morning light casting soft shadows. Cameron reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gentle touch sent a shiver down Zariah's spine. "Zariah," he said softly, "about earlier, in the office." "We should probably talk about that later," she interrupted, her heart racing. "When we're not both half asleep." Cameron nodded, his hand dropping to his side. "You're right. Later." He took a step back. "Good night, Zariah. Or good morning, I suppose." "Good morning, Cameron." She watched him walk away, his shoulders straight despite his fatigue. Only when the elevator doors closed behind him did she let herself into her apartment, leaning against the door as it closed. What was she doing? Getting involved with her boss was a recipe for disaster. And yet, the way he looked at her, the way he valued her mind, her opinions, it made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in years. As Zariah collapsed into bed, too tired to even change her clothes, her last thought was of Cameron's hand in hers, and the conversation they had postponed but couldn't avoid forever. The next few days were a blur of activity. Despite Cameron's suggestion that she take time off, Zariah came in as usual, helping to implement their trap and strengthen security across all Thorntech facilities. They were professional with each other, careful, not to be alone together outside of work hours. The moment in his office and later at her door hung between them, unacknowledged but not forgotten. On Friday afternoon, Zariah was in her small office, reviewing security logs, when Vanessa Bradford appeared in her doorway. "Miss Monroe, do." "You have a moment?" Zariah looked up, surprised. "Of course, Miss Bradford, please come in." Vanessa entered, closing the door behind her. She remained standing, her tailored suit and perfect posture making Zariah feel underdressed in her simple blouse and slacks. "I'll get straight to the point," Vanessa said. "Your relationship with Cameron is causing concern." Zariah kept her expression neutral. "My professional relationship with Mr. Thorne is exactly that. Professional." "Is it?" Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Late nights alone in his office? Emergency visits to facilities in the middle of the night? The way he looks at you in meetings?" Heat rose to Zariah's cheeks, but she held her ground. "We work well together, that's all." "Cameron is the face of this company," Vanessa continued, as if Zariah hadn't spoken. "His reputation affects all of us. A scandal involving a former janitor would be problematic." The words stung, but Zariah refused to show it. "Is there a point to this conversation, Ms. Bradford?" "The board is meeting next week to discuss the recent security breaches," Vanessa said. "Some members feel that bringing in an outsider with no formal credentials was a mistake, that perhaps these breaches began after your arrival." Zariah stood up, anger replacing embarrassment. "Are you accusing me of sabotage?" "I'm simply sharing concerns," Vanessa replied smoothly. "Cameron trusts you implicitly. Not everyone shares his confidence." "I've done nothing but help this company since I started here," Zariah said firmly. "My work speaks for itself." "Does it?" Vanessa moved toward the door, then paused. "Just some food for thought, Miss Monroe. Cameron has worked his entire life for this company. It would be a shame if his infatuation led to his downfall." With that parting shot, she left, closing the door quietly behind her. Zariah sank back into her chair, her hands trembling with anger and hurt. Was that how everyone saw her? As the janitor who had somehow seduced the CEO? And worse, were they actually suspecting her of being behind the attacks? She needed to talk to Cameron, to warn him about Vanessa's insinuations. But when she went to his office, Lisa informed her that he was in meetings all afternoon. He asked not to be disturbed, the assistant added, her expression sympathetic but firm. Zariah nodded and returned to her office, trying to focus on work but distracted by Vanessa's words. By the time the workday ended, she had made little progress and was nursing a pounding headache. She debated waiting for Cameron but decided against it. Their regular evening session wasn't scheduled for tonight anyway. Cameron had a charity gala to attend. Some fancy event where tickets cost more than Zariah used to make in a month. As she gathered her things to leave, her computer pinged with an alert. Someone had accessed their honeypot files. Zariah's heart raced as she pulled up the tracking data. The files had been accessed from inside ThornTech using a high-level administrative account. The user had tried to cover their tracks, but Zariah's code had recorded everything. She needed to tell Cameron immediately. This was the break they'd been waiting for. Grabbing her phone, she called his private number, but it went straight to voicemail. He must already be at the gala. Zariah hesitated. This couldn't wait until morning. The saboteur might realize they'd been caught and destroy evidence. Making a decision, she copied the tracking data to a secure drive and headed for the parking garage. She would go to the gala and find Cameron. It was being held at the Grand Plaza Hotel downtown. She'd seen the invitation on his desk. As she drove, Zariah tried to ignore the butterflies in her stomach. She'd never been to anything like a charity gala. She wasn't dressed for it. Her simple work clothes a far cry from the formal wear such events required. But this was about work, not fashion. The Grand Plaza was ablaze with lights when she arrived. Luxury cars pulling up to the entrance as elegantly dressed guests made their way inside. Zariah parked her modest sedan in the public lot across the street, feeling increasingly out of place. At the entrance, a security guard stopped her. "Invitation, miss?" "I don't have one," Zariah admitted, "but I need to speak with Cameron Thorne." "It's urgent. I work for him." The guard looked skeptical. "Mr. Thorne is a guest of honor tonight. I can't just let you in." "Please," Zariah insisted. "It's a company emergency. Just tell him Zariah Monroe needs to speak with him." The guard hesitated, then nodded. "Wait here." He spoke into his radio, and a few minutes later Cameron appeared at the entrance, resplendent in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. His face lit up when he saw Zariah, then quickly shifted to concern. "Zariah, what's wrong?" "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look compared to the glamorous guests behind him. "But someone accessed the honeypot files. I have the tracking data." Cameron's expression sharpened. "Show me." He led her to a quiet corner of the lobby, where she pulled out the secure drive and showed him the data on her phone. "The account belongs to Richard Webb," she said quietly, "the board member." Cameron's face hardened. "I need to see the rest of this data. We need to be absolutely certain before we make any accusations." "I can go back to the office," Zariah offered. "Continue tracking from there." "No," Cameron said decisively. "We do this together." He turned to a passing waiter. "Please inform Mr. Donovan that I've been called away on an emergency. My apologies." The waiter nodded and moved off, leaving them alone again. "You're leaving the gala?" Zariah asked, surprised. "But you're the guest of honor." "This is more important," Cameron said simply, placing a hand at the small of her back to guide her toward the exit. "My car's outside." The valet brought around a sleek black Aston Martin, and Cameron held the passenger door for Zariah before sliding into the driver's seat. As they drove back to ThornTech, Zariah was acutely aware of Cameron beside her, the subtle scent of his cologne, the confident way he handled the powerful car. He'd left an important event without hesitation when she needed him, choosing their work, choosing her, over his social obligations. The thought warmed her more than it should have. The ThornTech building was quiet when they arrived, most of the offices dark. They went straight to Cameron's office, where Zariah connected the secure drive to his computer and pulled up the complete tracking data. There, she said, pointing to a sequence of access logs. Webb's account accessed the files at 3:47 p.m., then tried to erase the access records at 3:52. But why? Cameron frowned. Richard has been with the company since my father's time. He was my father's friend. Could his account have been compromised? Zariah suggested. Maybe someone else is using his credentials. It's possible, Cameron admitted, but these access logs show a pattern. Look, similar access times every Friday for the past month, always from the same terminal in the executive wing. They spent the next hour digging deeper, uncovering a trail of suspicious activities all linked to Webb's account. By the time they finished, the evidence was damning. I need to confront him, Cameron said, his voice hard. First thing Monday morning. Not alone, Zariah insisted. If he's behind the attacks, he could be dangerous. Cameron looked at her, a mix of emotions crossing his face. I appreciate your concern, but this is something I need to handle personally. Richard was like an uncle to me growing up. He sighed, heavily. I just don't understand why he would do this. Zariah reached out, placing her hand over his on the desk. Sometimes people aren't who we think they are. Cameron turned his hand to clasp hers, his blue eyes intense as they met hers. And sometimes they're exactly who we hoped they'd be. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension. Zariah was acutely aware of how alone they were in the darkened building, how close they sat. Cameron, she began, her voice soft. About what Vanessa said. What did Vanessa say to you? He interrupted, his expression darkening. Zariah hesitated, then told him about the legal director's visit to her office earlier that day. As she spoke, Cameron's jaw tightened with anger. She had no right, he said, when Zariah finished. No right to intimidate you or make accusations. She's just protecting the company, Zariah said, though the words tasted bitter. And she's not entirely wrong. People are talking about us. Let them talk, Cameron said dismissively. I don't care what anyone thinks. But you should, Zariah insisted. You're the CEO, your reputation matters. Not as much as this, Cameron said, his voice dropping to a near whisper as he lifted their joined hands. Not as much as you. Zariah's heart hammered in her chest. Cameron, we can't. Why not? He challenged softly. Give me one good reason that doesn't involve what other people might think. Zariah struggled to find words, to articulate all the reasons this was a bad idea. I work for you, there's a power imbalance. You're not my employee, you're my consultant, and you've never once treated me like you were intimidated by my position. I was your janitor a month ago, she reminded him. People will say I slept my way into this job. People who matter know better. Cameron's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Is that all? Zariah took a shaky breath. We come from different worlds. You're a billionaire who attends charity galas in a tuxedo. I'm raising my teenage brother in a 2-bedroom apartment. Those are circumstances, Zariah, not who we are. Cameron's eyes held hers, sincere and intense. When I'm with you, none of that matters. You challenge me. You see me, not the CEO, not the name, just me. He leaned closer. Tell me you don't. Feel this too? Zariah couldn't lie, not to him, not to herself. I do, she admitted quietly. But I'm scared, Cameron. Not just of what people will say, but of what happens if this doesn't work. I need this job. Marcus needs me to keep this job. Your job is secure regardless of what happens between us, Cameron said firmly. I promise you that. He reached up, his hand gently cupping her cheek. I'm not asking for forever, Zariah. I'm just asking for a chance. For us to see where this might go. Zariah closed her eyes, leaning slightly into his touch. Every rational thought told her to pull away, to maintain professional boundaries. But her heart was tired of being rational, tired of always doing the safe thing. When she opened her eyes, Cameron was watching her, waiting for her decision. In that moment, with moonlight streaming through the office windows and the city quiet around them, Zariah made her choice. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but deepened as Cameron responded, his hand sliding into her hair to draw her closer. Warmth bloomed in Zariah's chest, spreading through her body as the kiss continued, sweet and intoxicating. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Cameron rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the night. You saved my company," he confessed softly. Zariah smiled, her fears temporarily forgotten in the joy of the moment. "That long?" "Longer, if I'm being honest." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I just didn't know it yet." A comfortable silence fell between them. The connection they'd been building for weeks finally acknowledged. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the quiet moment of tenderness unfolding in the CEO's office. Eventually, Cameron sighed reluctantly. "It's late. I should take you home." Zariah nodded, though part of her wanted to stay in this bubble, away from the real world and its complications. As they gathered their things and headed for the elevator, Cameron took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. The drive to Zariah's apartment was quiet, both lost in thought, but comforted by each other's presence. When they arrived, Cameron walked her to her door again, but this time there was no awkwardness, no hesitation. "Good night, Zariah," he said softly, bending to kiss her once more, a gentle promise. "Good night, Cameron," she replied, her smile reflected in his eyes. As she closed her apartment door behind her, Zariah leaned against it, her heart full. She knew there would be challenges ahead: Webb's betrayal, Vanessa's hostility, the inevitable gossip when their relationship became public. But for tonight, just for tonight, she allowed herself to simply be, happy to bask in the warmth of finding something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Little did she know that across town, in a darkened office, Richard Webb was making a phone call that would threaten everything she and Cameron had just found. "It's Webb," he said quietly into the phone. "We have a problem. They're on to me." He listened for a moment, then nodded grimly. "Yes. We need to move up the timeline. Tomorrow night. And we need to deal with the girl. She's becoming a liability." He hung up and stared out at the city lights, his expression hard and determined. Cameron Thorne's father had built an empire, and Richard Webb had spent decades in his shadow. Now finally he had a chance to take it all for himself, and no one, not Cameron, and certainly not some former janitor, was going to stand in his way. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through Zariah's bedroom window. She woke slowly, memories of the night before, Cameron's kiss, his gentle words bringing a smile to her face. For a few blissful minutes, she allowed herself to daydream, to imagine possibilities she'd never let herself consider before. Then, reality intruded. They still had a serious problem to deal with. Richard Webb, a trusted board member, appeared to be sabotaging Thorne Tech from within. Cameron needed to confront him, but not before they had gathered all the evidence. Zariah reached for her phone, not surprised to find a text from Cameron already waiting. "Good morning. Can you meet me at the office at 10? We need to prepare for Monday." She typed a quick reply. "I'll be there. Bringing coffee." In the kitchen, she found Marcus already up making scrambled eggs. At 16, he'd grown taller than her in the past year, his lanky frame filling out as he matured. "Morning, sis," he said, sliding a plate of eggs toward her. "You got in late last night." "Work emergency," Zariah replied, accepting the food gratefully. "Thanks for this." Marcus studied her face. "Must have been some emergency. You're glowing, Zariah." Felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Don't be ridiculous, whatever you say." Marcus grinned knowingly. "So, got plans today? I was thinking we could see that new Marvel movie." "I'm sorry I can't," Zariah said, genuinely regretful. "I have to go back to work. Maybe tomorrow?" Disappointment flashed across Marcus's face before he shrugged. "Sure, no problem. I'll see if Jake wants to go." Guilt tugged at Zariah's heart. Since starting at Thorne Tech, she'd had less time for her brother. The new job was good for them financially, but she didn't want Marcus to feel neglected. "Hey," she said, reaching across the counter to squeeze his hand. "How about dinner tonight? That Italian place you like? Just the two of us." Marcus brightened. "With tiramisu?" "Definitely with tiramisu," Zariah promised. "I'll be done by 6, I promise." She finished her breakfast quickly, then went to get ready. As she dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, Zariah thought about what to tell Marcus about Cameron. Nothing yet, she decided. Whatever was happening between them was too new, too fragile to share. An hour later, she pulled into the Thorn Tech parking garage, 2 coffee cups on the seat beside her. The building was quiet on a Saturday, only a few employees working overtime in scattered offices. Cameron was already in his office when she arrived, his usual impeccable suit replaced by casual slacks and a light sweater that brought out the blue of his eyes. He looked up when she entered, his face lighting up with a smile that made her heart skip. "Good morning," he said, rising to greet her. Zariah held up the coffee cups. "As promised." "You're amazing." Cameron took one of the cups, his fingers brushing hers deliberately. For a moment they just stood there, smiling at each other like teenagers. Then Cameron set his coffee down and stepped closer, his hands coming to rest lightly on her waist. "I've been thinking about you all night," he said softly. "Me too," Zariah admitted, setting her own cup down. "About you, I mean." Cameron's smile widened. "I gathered that." He hesitated, then asked, "Any regrets?" Zariah shook her head. "No. You?" "Not a single one." He leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a sweet, gentle kiss that quickly deepened into something more intense. Zariah's arms wound around his neck as she pressed closer, all thoughts of work momentarily forgotten. Cameron held her as if she were precious, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other warm against her lower back. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Cameron rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably focus on the Webb situation," he said reluctantly. "Probably," Zariah agreed, though she made no move to step away. Cameron sighed, pressing one more quick kiss to her lips before releasing her. "Later," he promised, his eyes conveying exactly what he meant. Zariah nodded, trying to calm her racing heart as they turned their attention to the task at hand. Cameron pulled up the evidence they had gathered the night before. "I want to be absolutely certain before we confront Webb," he said, his expression turning serious. "If we're wrong, we'll have alienated a key board member and my father's oldest friend." "We're not wrong," Zariah said confidently, "but I understand wanting to be thorough. What if we set another trap, something more specific?" They spent the next few hours crafting a plan. They would create a dummy file with plans for a revolutionary new product, something too tempting for the saboteur to resist, and place it in a secured location with enhanced tracking. When Webb accessed it, they would have irrefutable proof. "There's something else we need to discuss," Cameron said as they finished setting the trap. "What happens on Monday?" Zariah looked up. "You mean confronting Webb?" "That and us." Cameron took her hand. "I'm not ashamed of this, Zariah. I don't want to hide it. But I also know that going public will make things harder for you at the company." Zariah hadn't thought that far ahead. The reality of being Cameron Thorne's girlfriend, if that's what she was now, would mean scrutiny, gossip, maybe even hostility, from people like Vanessa. "Maybe we should be discreet for now," she suggested, "just until we deal with Webb and things settle down." Cameron nodded, though she could see he wasn't entirely happy with the idea. "If that's what you want. But I won't lie if asked directly." "Fair enough," Zariah agreed. "And for the record, neither will I." Their conversation was interrupted by a ping from Cameron's computer, an alert from their system. "Someone's accessing the company servers," Zariah said, peering at the screen. "Right now, on a Saturday." Cameron frowned. "Using Webb's credentials again?" "No, that's the strange part. It's a regular employee account, someone from R&D. Zariah's fingers flew over the keyboard as she traced the access. "They're looking at personnel files, executive-level access." "Can you see which files specifically?" Zariah nodded grimly. "Yours. And mine." Cameron's expression hardened. "Webb must have an accomplice. Lock them out, now." Zariah worked quickly, shutting down the intruder's access and locking the account. "Done. But they were in there for almost 10 minutes. We don't know what they saw. Or copied," Cameron added. "This changes things. Webb isn't working alone." They spent the next hour reviewing employee records, trying to identify who might be working with Webb. The account belonged to a junior researcher named David Chen, but when Cameron called security to locate him, they reported that Chen wasn't in the building. "Someone used his credentials remotely," Zariah concluded, "which means they have access to our employee authentication system. "This goes deeper than I thought," Cameron said, frustration evident in his voice. "We might be dealing with a full conspiracy, not just one disgruntled board member." By late afternoon, they had strengthened security protocols and set up alerts to notify them of any unusual system access. The trap for Webb was in place, ready for Monday. Zariah glanced at her watch. "I should go. I promised Marcus we'd have dinner tonight." "Of course," Cameron said. "Family comes first." He hesitated, then asked, "Would it be too forward to ask?" "If I could join you, I'd like to meet your brother." Zariah was taken aback. "You want to have dinner with us?" "At Luigi's pasta house," Cameron smiled. "Is that so hard to believe? I eat regular food in regular restaurants, you know." "It's not that," Zariah said quickly. "It's just, meeting Marcus is a big step." "Too big, too soon?" Zariah considered the question. Things were moving fast between them, but it felt right, and Marcus had been curious about Cameron for weeks. "No," she decided. "Not too soon, but I haven't told him about us." "Then we'll keep it casual," Cameron suggested. "Just the CEO having dinner with his consultant and her brother. Nothing suspicious about that at all." His deadpan delivery made Zariah laugh. Very subtle. "I'm known for my subtlety," Cameron replied with a wink. "Text me the address and time. I'll meet you there." Luigi's Pasta House was a small, family-owned restaurant in Zariah's neighborhood, with checkered tablecloths and photos of Italy on the walls. Nothing fancy, but the food was delicious and the prices reasonable. Zariah and Marcus arrived first, taking their usual booth by the window. Marcus was animated, telling her about his day with his friend Jake, when he suddenly stopped. Mid-sentence, his eyes widening as he looked over her shoulder. "Isn't that your boss?" he asked in a stage whisper. Zariah turned to see Cameron entering the restaurant, casually dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt. He spotted them and walked over, several heads turning to watch him pass. "Zariah," he greeted her with a warm smile. Before turning to Marcus, "And you must be Marcus, I'm Cameron Thorne." Marcus stared, then remembered his manners and stood to shake Cameron's hand. "Nice to meet you, sir." "Cameron, please," he said, sliding into the booth across from them. "Sorry to intrude on your dinner. Zariah mentioned you were coming here, and I had a few work things to discuss." Zariah gave him a grateful look for maintaining the pretense. "I hope you like Italian food." "Love it," Cameron replied, picking up a menu. The waiter arrived, clearly recognizing Cameron despite his casual attire. "Mr. Thorne," he said, eyes wide, "welcome to Luigi's. Can I get you a drink?" Once they had ordered, an awkward silence fell. Over the table, Marcus kept glancing between Zariah and Cameron, obviously curious. "So, Marcus," Cameron said, breaking the ice, "Zariah tells me you're interested in engineering." Marcus nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. I mean, Cameron, I want to study mechanical engineering. I'm applying to colleges now, including MIT," Zariah added proudly. "He's got the grades for it." "That's impressive," Cameron said sincerely. "MIT is hard to get into. I was rejected, actually." "You were?" Marcus asked, surprised. Cameron nodded. "Stanford accepted me instead. But MIT was my first choice, partly because your sister was there." "Did she tell you we found out we were there at the same time?" "Different departments, though, so our paths never crossed." "No, she didn't mention that," Marcus said, giving Zariah a curious look. "I didn't realize it myself until recently," Zariah explained. "I wasn't exactly hanging out with the business school crowd." "Your loss," Cameron teased. "We were a wild bunch. All those spreadsheets and market analyses really got the party started." Marcus laughed, visibly relaxing. The conversation flowed more easily after that, with Cameron asking Marcus thoughtful questions about his college plans and future goals. By the time their food arrived, the initial awkwardness had disappeared entirely. Zariah watched in amazement, as Cameron effortlessly charmed her brother, showing genuine interest in his life and aspirations. This was a side of Cameron she hadn't seen before, warm, funny, approachable. So different from the serious, intense CEO she'd come to know. As they finished their main course, Cameron asked, "How's the college application process going?" "Those application fees can add up," Marcus shrugged. "I'm applying for fee waivers and hoping for scholarships." Cameron nodded thoughtfully. Thorn Tech has a scholarship program for promising STEM students. You should apply. I can send you the details. Marcus's eyes widened. Really? That would be amazing. He's not getting special treatment, Zariah interjected quickly. Just so we're clear. Of course not, Cameron agreed. The applications are reviewed by a committee. I'm not even on it. He smiled at Marcus. But from what Zariah's told me about your abilities, I think you'd have a good shot regardless. The waiter appeared to clear their plates. Will there be dessert tonight? Tiramisu, Zariah and Marcus said in unison, then laughed. Make that 3, Cameron added, and I'd like to take care of the bill. That's not necessary, Zariah protested. Please, Cameron insisted. Here's the least I can do after crashing your family dinner. Marcus grinned. I'm not going to argue with free tiramisu. As they enjoyed their dessert, Zariah felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the food. Seeing the two most important men in her life getting along so well filled her with happiness she hadn't expected. When the meal was over, they walked out together into the cool evening air. The restaurant was only a few blocks from Zariah's apartment, so they had walked. I should get going, Cameron said. Thank you both for letting me join you. It was cool meeting you, Marcus said sincerely. Thanks for the scholarship info. My pleasure, Cameron replied. I'll email you the details tomorrow. I'll walk with you to your car, Zariah said to Cameron. To Marcus, she added, I'll be right back. Start heading home. Marcus gave her a knowing look, but nodded. Nice meeting you, Cameron, he said again. Before turning to walk toward their apartment building, Zariah fell into step beside Cameron as they walked toward the restaurant parking lot. Your car's going to be the fanciest thing this neighborhood has seen in years, she commented. Cameron chuckled. I should have driven something less conspicuous. A tank would have been more subtle than the Aston Martin. Thank you for tonight, Zariah said softly. Marcus really liked you. I liked him too, Cameron replied. He's a great kid. You've done an amazing job with him. They reached his car, standing beside it in the quiet lot. The streetlights cast a soft glow over them, the sounds of the city. A distant hum, so, Cameron said, taking her hands in his. Did I pass the brother test? With flying colors, Zariah assured him, though I think the scholarship offer might have biased the judge. I meant what I said, no special treatment, Cameron insisted, but he should know about the opportunity. Zariah nodded, then asked hesitantly, Was this weird for you, coming to a place like Luigi's? Cameron's brow furrowed. Why would it be weird? It's not exactly the 5-star restaurants you're probably used to. Zariah, Cameron said gently, I had a great time tonight. The food was delicious, the company was perfect, and I didn't have to wear a tie. That's my idea of a good evening. He pulled her closer, his arms encircling her waist. I don't care where we go or what we do. I just want to be with you. The sincerity in his voice melted away Zariah's insecurities. She reached up, her hand resting against his cheek. I want that too. Their kiss was sweet and lingering, a perfect end to a nearly perfect evening. When they finally broke apart, Cameron sighed reluctantly. I should let you get back to Marcus, he said, and we both need rest. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. Zariah nodded, though she was tempted to stay, in his arms a little longer. I'll see you at the office? First thing, Cameron confirmed. We'll be ready for Webb. With one last quick kiss, Zariah stepped back, allowing Cameron to get into his car. She watched as he drove away, raising her hand in a small wave as he disappeared around the corner. As she walked back to her apartment, Zariah felt like she was floating. Despite the challenges they faced at work, despite the uncertainty of their new relationship, she couldn't remember ever feeling this happy. Marcus was waiting for her in the living room, a knowing grin on his face. So, you and the boss, huh? Zariah froze. What are you talking about? Please, Marcus scoffed. I'm 16, not 6. I saw the way you two look at each other, and you don't discuss work things over family dinner. Zariah sighed, dropping onto the couch beside him. It's new, very new, as in yesterday new. But you like him, Marcus pressed. Like really like him? Yes, Zariah admitted. I really like him. Good, Marcus said simply. He seems like a decent guy. And he obviously thinks you're amazing, which means he's smart too. Zariah laughed, nudging. her brother with her shoulder. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise," Marcus replied loftily. "You were just too busy adulting to notice." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Marcus asked more seriously, "Is it going to be weird, though? Him being your boss and all?" "Probably," Zariah acknowledged, "but we'll figure it out." Marcus nodded, satisfied with her answer. "Well, I approve, and not just because he might help me get a scholarship. The scholarship thing is legit," Zariah assured him. "He wouldn't offer if it wasn't." "I know," Marcus said, surprising her, with his certainty. He doesn't seem like the type to make empty promises. As they talked more about the evening, Zariah marveled at her brother's maturity. Somehow, in the midst of all the challenges they'd faced, Marcus had grown into a thoughtful, perceptive young man. Their mother would have been so proud of him. Later, as Zariah got ready for bed, her phone buzzed with a text from Cameron. "Just wanted to say goodnight. And that meeting, Marcus, made me like you even more, if that's possible. See you tomorrow. Sweet dreams." Zariah smiled as she typed her reply. "Good night. He likes you too." "So do I. A lot." She fell asleep with that smile still on her face, dreaming of blue eyes and gentle hands. Sunday passed quietly, with Zariah spending the day with Marcus trying to make up for her recent absences. They went to the movie he'd wanted to see, then spent the afternoon playing video games and talking about his college applications. Cameron texted a few times, but respected that it was her family day. By evening, though, both their thoughts had turned to the coming confrontation with Richard Webb. "Everything's in place for tomorrow," Cameron texted. "Security is on alert. The trap is set. Are you nervous?" Zariah asked. "Yes," came the honest reply. "Webb was my father's right hand. If he's been sabotaging the company, I can't help wondering why." Zariah wished she could be with him, to offer comfort in person rather than through text messages. "We'll find out tomorrow. Try to get some sleep. You too. And Zariah, thank you for everything." As she prepared for bed that night, Zariah felt a sense of foreboding. Tomorrow would change everything one way or another. She just hoped they were ready for whatever came next. Monday morning dawned grey and rainy, matching Zariah's mood as she drove to Thorntech. She'd woken from troubled dreams, a vague sense of danger clinging to her as she'd gotten ready. Cameron was waiting in his office when she arrived, his expression grim. "Webb just arrived," he said without preamble. "Security is tracking his movements." Zariah nodded, taking her seat at what had become her usual spot beside his desk. "What's the plan?" "We wait," Cameron said simply. "The trap is set. When he accesses the files, we'll have him." They didn't have to wait long. Just after 9, an alert pinged on Cameron's computer. Webb had taken the bait, accessing the dummy files they'd created. "Got him," Zariah said, a note of triumph in her voice as she tracked his digital movements. "He's copying the files now." Cameron picked up his phone. "Security? Webb is in his office. Don't let him leave the building." He hung up and turned to Zariah. "Let's go." They took the elevator to the floor where the board members had their offices. Security guards were already positioned discreetly nearby, alerted by Cameron's call. As they approached Webb's office, Zariah felt her heart racing. This confrontation had been building for days, but now that it was here, she was nervous. Cameron seemed to sense her anxiety. He paused outside Webb's door, taking her hand briefly. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. "If things get heated, I want you to leave. Understand?" Zariah nodded, touched by his concern, but determined to see this through. Without knocking, Cameron pushed open the door to Webb's office. The older man looked up from his computer, surprise quickly turning to wariness when he saw who had entered. "Cameron," he said, his voice carefully controlled, "this is unexpected, and Ms. Monroe as well. To what do I owe the pleasure?" Cameron closed the door behind them, his expression hard. "You can drop the act, Richard. We know what you've been doing." Webb's eyebrows rose. "I'm afraid I don't understand." "The security breaches," Cameron said coldly. "The fire at the server facility. The attacks on our systems. It was you. All of it." Webb's face remained impassive, but Zariah noticed a slight tensing of his shoulders. "That's a serious accusation." "Cameron, do you have any proof?" You accessed the files 5 minutes ago, Zariah spoke up. We tracked your digital signature. We have records of every breach, every attack, all traced back to your credentials. Webb's eyes narrowed as he looked. Out here. You've been busy, Ms. Monroe. Quite a rise from cleaning floors to making accusations against board members. Leave her out of this, Cameron snapped. This is between you and me. Why, Richard? You were my father's friend. He trusted you. Something shifted in Webb's expression, a flash of long-buried resentment. Yes, I was his friend. For 30 years I stood by his side, helped him build this company. And what did I get in return? A corner office and a seat on the board, while he left everything to his son. So this is about my inheritance? Cameron asked incredulously. You're destroying what my father built because you're jealous. Webb laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. This isn't about jealousy, Cameron. It's about justice. Your father stole my ideas, my innovations. The core technology that made Thorntech a success, that was mine. But James had the money, the connections. He took what was mine and built his empire on it. Zariah watched the color drain from Cameron's face. That's not true. No? Ask yourself why your father made sure I stayed on the board even after he died. It wasn't friendship, it was guilt. Webb's voice was bitter. I've waited years for this moment, planning, preparing, and then you brought in this janitor, and suddenly my careful plans were at risk. You're the one who hired someone to hack our systems, Zariah said, the pieces finally falling into place. The Singapore breach, that was a test. You wanted to see how our security would respond. Webb smiled coldly. Clever girl. Yes, I needed to understand the vulnerabilities. I didn't expect you to be able to stop it. That was inconvenient. It's over, Richard, Cameron said firmly. Security is outside. The authorities have been notified. We have all the evidence we need. Evidence of what exactly? Webb asked calmly. That I accessed some files, that my account was used during security breaches. Any decent lawyer will argue that my credentials were stolen, that I was framed. His gaze shifted to Zariah. Perhaps by someone looking to advance their position in the company. Cameron stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. For that's enough, you're done here. I want your resignation on my desk within the hour. Webb stood, straightening his suit jacket. Or what? You'll fire me? The board won't allow it without proof, and as I've explained, you have none that would stand up to scrutiny. He smiled thinly. This isn't over, Cameron. Not by a long shot. He walked toward the door, pausing beside Zariah. Enjoy your moment in the sun, Ms. Monroe, he said quietly. It won't last. With that, he left the office, nodding politely to the security guards as he passed. Cameron stared after him, frustration evident in every line of his body. He's right. We don't have enough proof, not the kind that would convince a court. But we know he did it, Zariah insisted, and we've locked him out of the systems. He can't do any more damage. Don't underestimate him, Cameron warned. Richard Webb is not a man who gives up easily. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture. Zariah now recognized as a sign of stress. I need to call an emergency board meeting. Try to contain this before it gets worse. The rest of the day was a blur of activity. Cameron spent hours in meetings with the board, explaining the situation without directly accusing Webb of sabotage. Zariah worked with the IT security team, strengthening firewalls and changing access protocols to ensure Webb couldn't cause further harm. By evening, they were both exhausted. Zariah found Cameron in his office, staring out at the city lights, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. Hey, she said softly, closing the door behind her. How did it go with the board? Cameron turned, offering her a tired smile. About as well, as could be expected. They're concerned but not convinced. Webb has 30 years of history with this company. I have suspicions and circumstantial evidence. Zariah crossed to stand beside him at the window. What happens now? Now we wait. Cameron sighed. Webb will make another move, he has to. His plan, whatever it is, isn't complete. And we'll be ready when he does, Zariah said with more confidence than she felt. Cameron set down his glass and turned to face her fully. Zariah, there's something I need to tell you. Something Webb said that might be true. She looked up at him, concerned by the pain in his eyes. What is it? The core technology, Thorntech's foundation. Cameron's voice was strained. It's possible my father did steal Webb's ideas. I've been going through old files all afternoon. There are discrepancies. Patents filed just days after Webb presented concepts to my father. That doesn't justify what Webb is doing now, Zariah said firmly. No, it doesn't, but it explains it. Cameron's shoulders slumped slightly. My whole life I've tried to live up to my father's legacy, to be worthy of the company he built. What if that legacy is tainted? Zariah reached for his hand, holding it firmly in hers. We all make mistakes, Cameron. Even our parents. If what Webb says is true, that's between him and your father. It doesn't change who you are or what you've built. Cameron squeezed her hand gratefully. How do you always know the right thing to say? It's a gift, Zariah replied with a small smile, trying to lighten his mood. One of many. It worked. Cameron chuckled, pulling her into a gentle embrace. I don't know what I'd do without you, he murmured against her hair. Zariah closed her eyes, savoring the warmth and security of his arms around her. Luckily, you don't have to find out. They stood that way for a long moment, finding comfort in each other amid the uncertainty. Finally, Cameron sighed and stepped back. You should go home, get some rest. Tomorrow will be another long day. Zariah nodded, though she was reluctant to leave him. What about you? I have a few more things to take care of here, Cameron said. But I won't be long. Promise? Promise. He bent to kiss her softly. I'll call you when I get home. Zariah gathered her things and headed for the elevator, her mind racing with everything that had happened. Webb's threats, his claims about Cameron's father, the unresolved danger. It was almost too much to process. As she reached the lobby, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Working late again. I ordered pizza. Should I save you some? Zariah smiled, typing back, yes please, be home in 30. The parking garage was dimly lit and nearly empty when Zariah reached it. Most employees had left hours ago, leaving only a few cars scattered across the vast space. As she approached her car, Zariah had the unsettling feeling of being watched. She glanced around, seeing nothing but shadows and concrete pillars. Still, the sensation persisted, raising goosebumps on her arms. She quickened her pace, fishing her keys from her purse. Just as she reached her car, she heard footsteps behind her. Before she could turn, a hand clamped over her mouth, an arm wrapping around her waist to immobilize her. Don't scream, a male voice hissed in her ear. Just listen. Zariah struggled against the hold, her heart pounding with terror. The man tightened his grip. Mr. Webb sends his regards, the voice continued. He wants you to know that this is your only warning. Stay away from Thorn Tech. Stay away from Cameron Thorn, or next time, it won't be just a friendly chat. With that, he shoved her forward, causing her to stumble against her car. By the time she regained her balance and spun around, her attacker was gone, disappearing into the shadows of the garage. Zariah leaned against her car, shaking with fear and rage. Her first instinct was to call Cameron, but she hesitated. He was already dealing with so much. Would telling him about this threat help, or would it just add to his burden? After a moment's deliberation, she decided to keep it to herself, at least for tonight. She needed time to think, to process what had happened, and Cameron needed to focus on saving his company. As she drove home, Zariah couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Webb was escalating, moving from digital attacks to physical intimidation. What would be next, and more importantly, how far was he willing to go to get what he wanted? When Zariah arrived home, she was still shaken by the encounter in the parking garage. She took a moment in her car to compose herself, not wanting to worry Marcus. Inside the apartment, she found her brother sprawled on the couch, a box of pizza open on the coffee table. Saved you 3 slices, he said, not looking up from his phone. They're in the kitchen. Thanks, Zariah replied, trying to keep her voice steady as she headed to the kitchen. She wasn't hungry anymore, but she needed a moment alone to collect herself. As she stood in the kitchen, staring blankly at the pizza box, her phone rang. Cameron's name flashed on the screen. Hey, she answered, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. Hey, Cameron replied, and just the sound of his voice helped calm her racing heart. I just wanted to check that you got home safely. Yes, I'm home, Zariah said, deciding in that moment not to tell him about the threat. Not over the phone, at least. Just about to have some pizza with Marcus. Good, Cameron said, though he sounded distracted. Listen, something's come up. I'm going to be at the office late tonight. Don't worry about coming in early tomorrow. Zariah frowned. What's happened? Is it Webb? No, it's complicated. Financial stuff. I'll explain tomorrow. His vague response set off alarm bells in Zariah's mind. Cameron, what's going on? Are you okay? There was a pause, then Cameron sighed. I'm fine, just tired. It's been a long day. You're not telling me something, Zariah insisted. It's nothing for you to worry about, Cameron said firmly. Just get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow. Before she could press further, he ended the call. Zariah stared at her phone, a sense of unease settling over her. First the threat in the parking garage, now Cameron's strange behavior. Something was definitely wrong. She returned to the living room, pizza forgotten. Marcus, I need to go back out. Will you be okay here alone? Marcus looked up, concern crossing his face. Yeah, but what's going on? You look upset. It's just work stuff, Zariah assured him. I shouldn't be long. She grabbed her keys and headed back to her car, determination replacing fear. Something was happening at Thorntech, and Cameron was in the middle of it. If he wouldn't tell her what was going on, she would find out for herself. The drive back to Thorntech seemed to take forever. When she finally arrived, Zariah parked in the visitor lot, not wanting to risk another encounter in the parking garage. The lobby was deserted save for the night security guard, who recognized her and waved her through without question. As she rode the elevator to the executive floor, Zariah tried to prepare herself for whatever she might find. The floor was dark except for the light spilling from Cameron's office at the end of the hallway. As she approached, Zariah could hear voices. Cameron's and another she recognized as Vanessa Bradford's. She slowed her steps, not wanting to interrupt what sounded like a heated discussion. Standing just outside the door, she could hear their words clearly. You can't seriously be considering this, Cameron, Vanessa was saying, her voice sharp with frustration. Selling your controlling shares would be exactly what Webb wants. I don't see that I have a choice, Cameron replied, sounding defeated in a way Zariah had never heard before. The evidence he's presented to the board is compelling. If I fight this, it will drag out in court for years. The company might not survive. So you're just giving up? Vanessa demanded. Letting him win? I'm trying to save what my father built, Cameron shot back, even if it means I'm no longer in charge. There was a pause, then Vanessa's voice softened. And what about Zariah? Have you told her your plans? At the mention of her name, Zariah leaned closer to the door. No, Cameron admitted. Not yet. I don't know how. She deserves to know, Vanessa said, surprising Zariah with her supportive tone. Especially if you care about her as much as I think you do. I do, Cameron said quietly. More than I thought possible after such a short time. But once this deal goes through, everything will change. I won't be CEO anymore. Her position will be terminated, Vanessa finished for him. Webb made that clear. It's one of his conditions. Zariah felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. Cameron was selling the company, and her job would be gone. Before she could process this information, she heard movement inside the office. Vanessa was leaving. Zariah quickly stepped back, ducking around a corner just as the office door opened. Think about what I said, Vanessa called back into the office. Don't make any decisions tonight. Sleep on it. Zariah waited until Vanessa's footsteps had faded before stepping out from her hiding place. She stood there for a moment, uncertain whether to confront Cameron or leave quietly and pretend she hadn't heard anything. The decision was made for her when Cameron appeared in the doorway of his office, stopping short when he saw her standing. In the darkened hallway. Zariah, he said, his voice a mixture of surprise and something that might have been guilt. What are you doing here? You sounded strange on the phone, she said simply. I was worried. Cameron's shoulders slumped slightly. How much did you hear? Enough, Zariah replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. You're selling the company to Webb? After everything he's done? Cameron gestured for her to enter his office. It's not that simple. Inside, the evidence of a long, stressful day was clear. Papers were scattered across his desk, his suit jacket was thrown carelessly over a chair, and an empty coffee cup sat beside his computer. It seems pretty simple to me, Zariah said, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. Webb threatened, "You and your giving in. And apparently I'm being sacrificed as part of the deal." "That's not fair," Cameron protested. "Webb went to the board with evidence, real evidence, that my father stole his intellectual property, patents, designs, all of it. He's threatening. A lawsuit that could destroy Thorntech completely. So you're just giving up?" Zariah echoed Vanessa's words. "I'm trying to save thousands of jobs," Cameron countered. "Including yours." "Don't lie to me," Zariah said sharply. "I heard what Vanessa said. My termination is part of Webb's conditions." Cameron looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "I was going to find you another position, in a different department, away from Webb's direct control." "As what? The janitor again?" Zariah couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "Did you ever stop to think that maybe that's not what I want?" "What do you want, Zariah?" Cameron asked, his blue eyes finally meeting hers. "Tell me." "I want you to fight," she said firmly. "For your company, for what's right. Even if it means risking everything, even if we lose." "Yes," Zariah insisted, "because some things are worth fighting for." Cameron was silent for a long moment, studying her face. Then he sighed deeply. "There's something else you should know, something I just found out today." He walked to his desk and picked up a file, handing it to her. "This is what Webb presented to the board. Look at the last page." Zariah opened the file, skimming through technical documents and old correspondence between Webb and Cameron's father. On the last page was a photograph. A much younger Richard Webb standing beside a woman with familiar dark eyes and a warm smile. "That's my mother," Zariah whispered, shock coursing through her. "How is this possible?" "They worked together," Cameron explained gently. "Before you were born, your mother was one of the engineers on Webb's original team. Her name is on some of the patent applications that my father later claimed as his own." Zariah stared at the photo, memories flooding back. "She never mentioned working with Webb. She always said she left the tech industry to raise me. Maybe she didn't want you to know what happened," Cameron suggested, "that her work was stolen, her contributions erased." "So this is personal for Webb," Zariah realized. "It's not just about you or your father. It's about my mother, too." Cameron nodded grimly. "I think that's why he's so determined to have you removed from the company. Your presence reminds him of her, of what was taken from both of them." Zariah sank into a chair, overwhelmed by this revelation. Her mother had never spoken much about her early career, focusing instead on Zariah's education, and later on fighting her illness. How much of her history had she kept hidden? "Webb threatened me tonight," Zariah said suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could reconsider. "In the parking garage, someone grabbed me, told me to stay. Away from you and Thorntech." Cameron's expression darkened with anger. "Why didn't you tell me immediately?" "I had enough to deal with," Zariah said. "And honestly, I wasn't sure what to do." Cameron crossed the room in 2 quick strides, kneeling in front of her chair to take her hands in his. "Zariah, listen to me. Nothing, not this company, not Webb, nothing, is more important to me than your safety. Do you understand? If anything happened to you..." The raw emotion in his voice made Zariah's heart ache. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "I'm okay, really." Cameron's hands tightened around hers. "We need to call the police, report the threat." "And tell them what?" Zariah asked wearily. "I didn't see who it was. I have no proof. Webb was behind it." "I don't care," Cameron insisted. "I want it on record, and I want security escorting you at all times when you're in this building." Zariah pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. "What about the company? Webb's offer?" Cameron's expression hardened with resolve. "Vanessa was right. I'm not giving up without a fight. Webb thinks he has me cornered, but he's forgotten one important thing." "What's that?" A small smile curved Cameron's lips. "I have you on my side, and you're the most formidable ally I could ask for." Despite everything, Zariah felt herself smiling. Back. So what's the plan? First, we report the threat against you, Cameron said firmly. Then we go through every scrap of evidence Webb has presented, looking for weaknesses, inconsistencies. There has to be something we can use. And if there isn't, Zariah asked quietly. Cameron's expression grew serious again. Then we start over. Together. Thorntech isn't the only tech company in the world. The simple declaration, together, warmed Zariah from within. Despite the revelations and threats of the day, despite the uncertainty ahead, one thing was clear. Whatever happened next, they would face it as a team. Together, she repeated, sealing the promise with a gentle kiss. Outside the office window, the city lights twinkled against the night sky, oblivious to the battle being waged within the glass tower of Thorntech. A battle that was just beginning, with stakes higher than either of them had imagined. And in the shadows, Richard Webb waited, confident in his victory, unaware that his greatest threat wasn't Cameron Thorne, but the daughter of the woman whose brilliance had once rivaled his own. The next morning, Zariah and Cameron arrived at the police station together to report the threat from the previous night. The detective who took their statement seemed skeptical but professional, promising to look into the matter. Without a description of the assailant or any witnesses, there's not much we can do, he explained. But we'll increase patrols around Thorntech and your residence, Ms. Monroe. As they left the station, Cameron placed a protective hand on Zariah's lower back. I'm not satisfied with that response, he said, his voice tight with frustration. I'm hiring private security for you. That's not necessary, Zariah protested. I can take care of myself. Please, Zariah, Cameron said, his blue eyes intense. Just until this situation with Webb is resolved. For my peace of mind, if nothing else. She could see the worry etched on his face and relented. Fine, but nothing too obvious. I don't want Marcus to be alarmed. Agreed. Cameron opened the car door for her. Now let's get to the office. We have a lot of work to do. The atmosphere at Thorntech was tense when they arrived. News of Webb's claims against Cameron's father had spread through the executive ranks, creating an undercurrent of uncertainty. Employees watched them pass with curious eyes, whispering behind their hands. In Cameron's office, they found Vanessa waiting, a stack of legal files on the desk beside her. I've been going through all the original patent applications, she said, without preamble. Looking for any weakness in Webb's case? Cameron raised an eyebrow. I thought you were convinced I should take his offer. I was playing devil's advocate, Vanessa replied with a hint of a smile. Someone has to. But that doesn't mean I'm not on your side. What have you found? Zariah asked, setting her purse down and joining them at the desk. Vanessa's expression turned serious. Webb's claims about the intellectual property are strong. There are definitely questionable timelines between his presentations to the board and your father's patent filings, Cameron. But, Cameron prompted, sensing there was more. But, Vanessa continued, I discovered something interesting about the corporate structure back then. Your father didn't file those patents in his name, or even directly in Thorntech's name. He used a shell company called Meridian Technologies. Why is that significant? Zariah asked. Because, Vanessa said, pulling out a yellow document, Meridian Technologies had 3 equal partners, James Thorne, Richard Webb, and Elena Monroe. Zariah gasped. My mother, Vanessa nodded. Your mother was more than just an engineer on Webb's team, Zariah. She was a founding partner in the original technology, and according to these documents, she sold her shares to James Thorne 2 years after the company was established, right around the time you would have been born. Cameron leaned forward, studying the document. So my father didn't steal Webb's ideas, they were partners, all 3 of them. It appears so, Vanessa confirmed. Webb conveniently left this part out of his presentation to the board. He's positioning himself as the sole creator, the victim of theft, when in reality it was a partnership that dissolved. But why would my mother sell her shares? Zariah wondered aloud. She was brilliant, she loved technology. Maybe she needed the money, Cameron suggested gently. Or maybe, as you said, she wanted to focus on raising you. Zariah shook her head, trying to process this new information about her mother. I need to know more. There has to be more to the story. There is, Vanessa said, pulling out another file. I also found this. A lawsuit filed by Webb against both your parents, Zariah, 16 years ago. It was settled out of court and all records were sealed. 16 years ago, Zariah repeated. That was when my father left us. He just disappeared one day. My mother never explained why. The three of them exchanged meaningful looks, the pieces starting to come together. We need to unseal those records, Cameron decided. They might hold the key to understanding Webb's grudge and stopping him. That could take weeks, even months, Vanessa cautioned. And Webb is pushing for a board vote on his offer this Friday. Then we need to buy time, Cameron said. Zariah, can you keep digging into the technical side? Look for anything in the original patents that might contradict Webb's claims. Zariah nodded. I'll start right away. I'll work on delaying the board vote, Vanessa added. I have a few allies who might help us. As they outlined their plan, Cameron's assistant Lisa knocked on the door. Mr. Thorne, Mr. Webb is here to see you. He says it's urgent. Cameron's jaw tightened. Send him in. Zariah and Vanessa exchanged concerned glances, but remained seated as Webb entered the office. He looked perfectly composed in an expensive suit, his silver hair neatly combed, a slight smile playing at his lips. Cameron, he greeted, then nodded to the women. Ms. Bradford, Ms. Monroe. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. What do you want, Richard? Cameron asked bluntly. Webb's smile didn't falter. I came to see if you've had time to consider my offer. The board seems quite interested in resolving this matter quickly. I'm still considering my options, Cameron replied coldly. I see. Webb's gaze shifted to Zariah. Ms. Monroe, I was surprised to hear about the unfortunate incident in the parking garage yesterday. Most distressing. Zariah felt a chill run down her spine at the veiled threat. Yes, it was. The police are investigating. The police? Webb raised an eyebrow. Surely that's excessive for what was likely just a random encounter. The city can be dangerous after dark. It wasn't random, Cameron said, his voice hard. The attacker mentioned you by name, Richard. Webb's expression remained unperturbed. How curious, perhaps someone is trying to frame me, just as someone might have been trying to frame me for those security breaches. His cold eyes fixed on Zariah. People will go to extraordinary lengths to advance their positions, won't they? Before Cameron could respond, Webb turned back to him. I'll give you until tomorrow to make your decision, Cameron. After that, I take my evidence to the full board and the press. I imagine the headlines would be quite damaging to Thorntech's stock price. With that parting shot, he left, closing the door quietly behind him. He's bluffing, Vanessa said once he was gone. He doesn't want this to go public any more than we do. It would devalue the company he's trying to take over. Maybe, Cameron conceded, but he's desperate. And desperate. People are dangerous. Zariah was quiet, Webb's words about her mother echoing in her mind. There was a missing piece to this puzzle, something that connected her family to Webb's vendetta against the Thorns. I need to talk to Marcus, she said, suddenly. He might remember something about that time, about why my father left. Cameron nodded. Go. Take the rest of the day. And Zariah, be careful. Webb's made it clear he sees you as a threat. I will, she promised, gathering her things. I'll call you later. As she left Thorntech, Zariah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The security guard Cameron had hired followed discreetly in a car behind hers, a reassuring presence given Webb's veiled threats. Marcus was still at school, giving Zariah time to search through the few boxes of her mother's belongings they had kept after her death. Most were filled with photographs, old clothes, and mementos that held sentimental rather than informational value. In the bottom of the last box, Zariah found a small locked metal case she had never opened. The key was missing, but with a hairpin and some patience, she managed to pick the simple lock. Inside was a stack of papers and a small leather-bound journal. The papers were legal documents, her mother's copy of the settlement agreement with Webb. Most of the details were redacted, but one clause stood out clearly. Both Elena Monroe and her husband, Thomas, agreed never to work in the technology sector again, and to maintain complete silence about their work at Meridian Technologies. They were forced out of the industry, Zariah murmured to herself. That's why Mum never went back to engineering, why she never talked about her work. She turned to the journal, opening it with trembling hands. The entries were sporadic, but one from 16 years ago caught her eye. Richard came to the house. Today, threatened to take everything if Thomas doesn't sign the agreement. Said he would make sure neither of us ever worked in tech again, all because of what Thomas found in the backup server. I don't know what to do. The children come first. Always. The entry ended there, leaving Zariah with more questions than answers. What had her father found? Why had it been worth threatening? Her parents' careers? She was still pondering these questions when Marcus came home from school, dropping his backpack by the door with a loud thud. "Hey, sis, you're home early." He paused, taking in the boxes scattered around the living room. "What's all this?" "Mom's things," Zariah explained. "Marcus, do you remember anything about when Dad left? You were young, but maybe something stuck with you?" Marcus frowned, sitting on the couch beside her. "Not much. I remember there was a lot of fighting. Dad was upset about something to do with his work. And there was a man who came to the house, tall with grey hair even then. He and Dad argued in the driveway." "Webb," Zariah said softly. "That must have been Richard Webb." "Why are you asking about this now?" Marcus questioned. "Does it have something to do with your job at Thorntech?" Zariah hesitated, then decided her brother deserved the truth. "Yes, Webb is trying to take over the company. He has some kind of grudge against the Thorns, and apparently against our family too." Marcus's eyes widened. "Whoa, that's heavy. Is that why that guy has been following you around?" "What guy?" Zariah asked sharply. "The one in the black sedan. He's been parked across the street since you got home." Marcus moved to the window, peering out. "See, right there." Zariah relaxed slightly. "That's security. Cameron hired him after—" She trailed off, not wanting to worry her brother. "After what?" Marcus pressed, his expression serious. "Zariah, what's going on?" She sighed, knowing she couldn't hide the truth from him. "Someone threatened me last night, in the parking garage at Thorntech. We think Webb was behind it." "What?" Marcus exclaimed. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine," Zariah assured him. "Just scared me a little. That's why Cameron hired security." Marcus's expression darkened. "I don't like this, Zariah. Maybe you should quit. Find another job." "I can't," she said firmly. "Not now. Cameron needs me. And honestly, I need answers. About Mom, about what really happened with Webb." Before Marcus could argue further, Zariah's phone rang. It was Cameron. "Zariah," he said when she answered, his voice tight with urgency. "I need you to come back to the office. We found something." "What is it?" she asked, already standing and gathering her purse. "It's about your father," Cameron replied. "He didn't just leave 16 years ago. He disappeared completely. No records, no trail. It's as if he vanished off the face of the earth." Zariah felt a chill run down her spine. "You think something happened to him? Something worse than just leaving us?" "I don't know," Cameron admitted. "But I have Vanessa looking into it. She has contacts in law enforcement who might be able to help." "I'll be right there," Zariah promised, ending the call. To Marcus, she said, "I have to go back to work. Will you be okay here alone?" Marcus crossed his arms. "I'm coming with you." "What?" "No, Marcus, this is serious." "Exactly," her brother interrupted. "It involves our family, our father. I have a right to know what's going on." Zariah looked at her brother's determined face and realized he was right. This affected him too. "All right," she conceded. "But you stay close to me and you do exactly what I say if anything happens. Understand?" Marcus nodded solemnly. "I understand." The drive back to Thorntech was tense, both siblings lost in their own thoughts. The security car followed at a discreet distance, a reminder of the danger lurking behind Webb's polished facade. When they arrived, Cameron was waiting in the lobby, surprise registering on his face when he saw Marcus. "This is my brother, Marcus," Zariah explained quickly. "He's involved in this too, Cameron. He deserves to know what's happening." Cameron nodded, extending his hand to the teenager. "Of course. It's good to see you again, Marcus. Though I wish it were under better circumstances." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "Me too." "Let's go up to my office," Cameron suggested. "Vanessa is waiting with what we've found." As they rode the elevator, Cameron explained that they had been digging deeper into the history of Meridian Technologies, the partnership between his father, Webb, and Zariah's mother. The original technology was groundbreaking, he said, a security protocol that was years ahead of its time, the foundation of what would become Thorntech's core products. And Webb claims your father stole it from him, Zariah added. Yes, but what's strange is that the original patents list all three of them as inventors. It was only later, after your mother sold her shares and your father left the company, that my father became the sole name associated with the technology. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor, and they made their way to Cameron's office. Vanessa was waiting along with a man Zariah didn't recognize, middle-aged with the weathered look of someone who had seen too much. "This is Detective Miller," Cameron introduced him. "He's been helping us look into your father's disappearance." Zariah and Marcus exchanged surprised glances. "Detective?" Zariah questioned. "I thought you were using private contacts." "This goes beyond corporate espionage," Vanessa explained grimly. "What we've uncovered, it's potentially criminal." Detective Miller gestured for them to sit. "Ms. Monroe, what do you remember about your father's departure 16 years ago?" Zariah shook her head slightly. "Not much. He just didn't come home one day. My mother filed a missing persons report, but nothing came of it. Eventually, she told us he had left us, that he wasn't coming back." "Did she ever say why?" the detective pressed. "No, she refused to talk about it." Miller nodded, making a note. "I've been reviewing the original case file. It was closed rather quickly. Too quickly, in my opinion. And there's something odd." The detective assigned to the case received a call from Richard Webb, instructing him to drop the investigation. "Webb had no authority to do that," Cameron pointed out. "No, he didn't," Miller agreed. "But he had influence and money. The investigation was shelved, classified as a voluntary disappearance." Marcus spoke up, his voice tight with emotion. "Are you saying Webb had something to do with our father leaving? Or—" He couldn't finish the thought. Miller's expression softened slightly. "We don't know yet, but I'm reopening the case. There are too many unanswered questions." Zariah felt as if the floor were tilting beneath her. All these years, she had believed her father had abandoned them. What if something worse had happened? What if Webb was responsible? "I found something today," she said, pulling the journal from her purse. "In my mother's things. She wrote that Webb threatened them, forced them to sign an agreement after my father found something on a backup server." Miller took the journal carefully. "This could be important evidence. May I keep this for now?" Zariah nodded numbly. Cameron moved to sit beside her, taking her hand in silent support. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, his young voice steady despite the circumstances. "Now," Miller said, "we investigate properly. I'll be looking into Mr. Webb's activities around the time of your father's disappearance. Phone records, financial transactions, anything that might give us a lead." "And in the meantime?" Cameron asked. "Webb is pushing for a board vote this Friday. If he gains control of Thorntech, he'll have even more power to cover his tracks," Vanessa finished grimly. "We need to delay that vote," Cameron decided. "Vanessa, use every legal maneuver you can think of. I need time." "I'll do my best," she promised, gathering her things. "I should get started right away." As Vanessa and Detective Miller left, Cameron turned to Zariah and Marcus. "I'm so sorry you're both caught up in this. Whatever happened to your father will find the truth." Marcus nodded solemnly. "Thank you." Zariah squeezed Cameron's hand gratefully. "What about tonight? Is it safe for us to go home?" Cameron frowned. "I'd feel better if you stayed somewhere Webb wouldn't expect. My penthouse has excellent security. You'd both be safe there." "Your penthouse?" Zariah repeated, surprised by the offer. "Just until we know more," Cameron assured her. "There's plenty of room, and Webb would never think to look for you there." Zariah looked at Marcus, who shrugged. "I'm cool with it. Beats being scared in our own apartment." "All right," she agreed. "We'll need to get some things from home first. I'll come with you," Cameron said, his tone making it clear this wasn't up for debate. "We'll take my car. It has bulletproof glass." "Bulletproof?" Marcus echoed, his eyes widening. "You think it's that serious?" Cameron's expression was grim. "I think. Webb is desperate, and desperate men are capable of anything." The trip to Zariah's apartment was quick and tense. They packed essential items for a few days, Cameron's security team keeping watch outside. Within an hour, they were on their way to Cameron's penthouse, in the city's most exclusive residential tower. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building, with panoramic views of the city skyline. It was sleek and modern, with high ceilings and minimalist decor, yet still felt warm and lived in. "Wow," Marcus breathed as they entered. "This place is incredible." "Make yourselves at home," Cameron said, showing them to the guest rooms. "There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. The building has 24-hour security, and I've stationed additional guards in the lobby." Once they had settled in, Cameron ordered dinner for the three of them. As they ate, they tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, discussing Marcus's college applications and Cameron's travel experiences, carefully avoiding the subject of Webb and the threats hanging over them. After dinner, Marcus excused himself to work on homework, leaving Zariah and Cameron alone in the living room. They moved to the balcony. The city lights spread out below them like a blanket of stars. "How are you holding up?" Cameron asked softly, standing close beside her at the railing. Zariah sighed. "I don't know. It's a lot to process. All these years, I thought my father abandoned us. Now I don't know what to think." Cameron wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her gently against his side. "Whatever happened, it wasn't your fault, or your mother's." "I keep thinking about her," Zariah admitted. "How she never complained, never talked about the past. She just focused on taking care of us, on making sure we had what we needed, all while carrying this terrible secret." "She sounds like an extraordinary woman," Cameron said. "Like her daughter." Zariah looked up at him, touched by the sincerity in his eyes. "I'm scared, Cameron. Not just about Webb and his threats. I'm scared of what we might find out about my father." "I know," he said softly. "But whatever it is, we'll face it together. I promise." He bent down, his lips meeting hers in a tender kiss that spoke of comfort and commitment. Zariah leaned into him, drawing strength from his steady presence. When they broke apart, Cameron rested his forehead against hers. "I never expected any of this when I found you in my office that night, but I wouldn't change it, finding you. It's changed everything." "For me too," Zariah whispered. "Whatever happens with Webb, with Thorntech, this is real. What we have." Cameron nodded, his blue eyes intense in the moonlight. "It is, and we'll protect it, together." They stayed on the balcony for a long time, holding each other close, finding peace in the midst of the storm surrounding them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations perhaps. But for tonight, they had this moment, this connection that had grown from the most unexpected beginning into something neither of them could have imagined. The next morning, Zariah woke early, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The guest room in Cameron's penthouse was larger than her entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the sunrise over the city. She found Cameron already up, dressed in running clothes, making coffee in the kitchen. "Morning," he greeted her with a warm smile. "Sleep well?" "Better than I expected," she admitted, accepting the mug he offered. "Is Marcus up yet?" "Not a peep," Cameron replied. "Teenagers and their sleep requirements." Zariah smiled, grateful for the moment of normalcy. "What's the plan for today?" Cameron's expression grew serious. "I have back-to-back meetings with board members, trying to shore up support before Friday's vote. Vanessa is filing motions to delay the meeting, but we need a backup plan." "I want to go through the technical documentation again," Zariah said. "There might be something in the original code that could help us understand what my father found on that server." Their conversation was interrupted by Cameron's phone ringing. He answered, his expression shifting from annoyance to shock as he listened. "When?" he asked sharply. "Are you sure?" "Yes, send everything you have. We'll be right there." He ended the call, turning to Zariah with a grim expression. "That was Detective Miller. They found something, a record of a payment from Webb to a known hitman, dated 2 days after your father disappeared." Zariah felt the blood drain from her face. "Are you saying—" "We don't know yet," Cameron said quickly. "But it's enough for the police to bring Webb in for questioning. They're on their way to his house now." Zariah sank into a chair, her coffee forgotten. I need to tell Marcus. Of course, Cameron agreed. Take your time. Miller wants to meet with us at the station when you're ready. Waking Marcus and explaining the new development was one of the hardest things Zariah had ever done. Her brother listened in stunned silence, his young face pale but composed. I always hoped he might come back someday, Marcus said quietly when she had finished. That he had a good reason for leaving. I guess maybe he did. Zariah hugged him tightly. We don't know anything for certain yet, but whatever we find out, we'll face it together, like we always have. I want to go with you, Marcus insisted. To the police station. He was my father too. Zariah hesitated, looking to Cameron for guidance. It's your decision, Cameron said gently, but I think he has a right to be there. She nodded, taking a deep breath. All right, get dressed. We leave in 20 minutes. The police station was buzzing with activity when they arrived. Detective Miller met them in the lobby, his expression somber. Webb is here, he informed them. He's denying everything, of course, but we have enough to hold him for questioning for now. What exactly did you find? Cameron asked as they followed Miller to a private conference room. Financial records, Miller explained. A wire transfer of $50,000 to a man named Victor Renault. He was a suspect in several contract killings, though we never had enough evidence to charge him. He died in a car accident 5 years ago. Zariah felt Marcus stiffen beside her. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. There's more, Miller continued, opening a file on the table. We executed a search warrant on Webb's home this morning. In his safe we found these. He spread several photographs across the table. They showed a cabin in a wooded area, a man digging what appeared to be a grave, and Richard Webb watching from a few feet away. These were taken 16 years ago, Miller said quietly. The metadata on the digital copies confirms it. Cameron leaned forward, studying the images. Is that Zariah's father, the man digging? Miller shook his head. We believe that's Renault. We can't see the victim in these photos. But given the timing and the payment, you think my father is buried somewhere in those woods, Zariah said, her voice hollow. That Webb had him killed. Miller nodded grimly. It's a strong possibility. We're working to identify the location now. These photos don't have GPS data, but our forensic team is analyzing the vegetation and landscape features. Marcus stood abruptly, his face pale. I need some air. I'll go with him, Cameron offered, seeing Zariah's torn expression. Thank you, she whispered, watching as Cameron led her brother gently from the room. Once they were alone, Miller's professional demeanor softened slightly. Ms. Monroe, I know this is incredibly difficult, but I need to ask, do you have any idea what your father might have found that would make Webb resort to such extreme measures? Zariah shook her head, still trying to process the horrifying possibility that her father had been murdered. Only what my mother wrote in her journal, something on a backup server. It must have been damaging enough that Webb couldn't risk it becoming public. Miller made a note. We've seized all of Webb's computers and records. If there's anything to find, we will. Has he confessed? Zariah asked. No. He's claiming the payment to Renault was for private security services, and he says the photos were taken on a hunting trip. Miller's expression made it clear what he thought of these explanations. But with this evidence plus your mother's journal, we have enough to hold him while we investigate further. Zariah nodded, a strange numbness settling over her. After all these years of believing her father had abandoned them, the truth might be far worse than she had imagined. Cameron returned a few minutes later alone. Marcus is with the officer in the break room, he explained. He needed a moment. Zariah stood. I should go to him. There's one more thing you should know, Miller said before she could leave. Webb has been calling board members from the station. Apparently he's still trying to push forward with the vote on Friday. Cameron's expression hardened. Even now, with these charges hanging over him, he's desperate, Miller said simply. And he knows that if he loses control of Thorntech, he loses his power, his protection. I need to get back to the office, Cameron decided. Talk to the board personally. Zariah was torn, wanting to support both her brother and Cameron. I should stay with Marcus. Of course, Cameron agreed immediately. Take as much time as you need. I can handle the board. Actually, Miller interjected, it might be helpful if Ms. Monroe came to Thorntech as well. We'll be questioning employees. About the backup server her father supposedly found. Having someone with technical expertise could speed things up. Zariah hesitated, then nodded. Let me talk to Marcus first. Make sure he's okay. She found her brother in the break room, staring blankly at a vending machine. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry. Hey, she said softly, sitting beside him. You doing okay? Marcus shrugged. Not really, but I'm dealing. He turned to look at her. Is it weird that part of me is almost relieved to know he didn't just leave us? No, Zariah assured him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. I feel the same way. It doesn't make it hurt less, but at least now we know it wasn't our fault. He didn't choose to go. They sat in silence for a moment, both processing the revelation that had shattered the narrative they'd lived with for 16 years. What happens now? Marcus finally asked. The police need my help at Thorn Tech, Zariah explained, to look for whatever Dad found on that server. Would you be okay staying here with Detective Miller? Or I can have Cameron's security take you back to the penthouse. Marcus straightened his shoulders. I want to help. I'm good with computers too, remember? Maybe I can spot something you miss. Zariah studied her brother's determined face. At 16, he was on the cusp of adulthood. Too old to be sheltered from the truth, but still so young to be dealing with such trauma. All right, she decided. But you stay with me. No wandering off, no matter what. Marcus nodded solemnly. Promise. When? They returned to the conference room. Zariah explained their decision to Miller and Cameron. The detective agreed to arrange a police escort to Thorntech, while Cameron made calls to prepare for their arrival. The board is in emergency session, Cameron informed them as they drove to the office. Vanessa managed to convince them to hear all the evidence before making any decisions about Webb's offer. Will they listen? Zariah asked skeptically. Cameron's expression was grim. They'll have to. A CEO under investigation for murder is not exactly good for shareholder confidence. Thorntech was in chaos when they arrived. Employees gathered in small groups, whispering about Webb's arrest. News vans were parked outside, reporters hoping for a statement from Cameron. They bypassed the main entrance, using a private elevator that took them directly to the executive floor. Vanessa was waiting for them, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled after what had clearly been a stressful morning. The board is demanding answers, she said without preamble. Half of them are in panic mode, the other half are in denial. Webb has been calling them from the station, claiming he's being framed. Let me talk to them, Cameron said decisively. Zariah, you and Marcus go with the tech team. Find whatever it is your father discovered. Zariah nodded, her mind already shifting to the technical challenge ahead. We'll need access to the oldest backup servers, the ones from 16 years ago. Already arranged, Vanessa confirmed. The IT director is waiting for you in the server room. As Cameron headed to the boardroom, Zariah and Marcus followed a security officer to the lower level, where Thorntech's main servers were housed. The room was cold and humming with the sound of dozens of machines, blinking lights casting a blue glow over everything. The IT director, a middle-aged man named Jenkins, greeted them with obvious curiosity. Ms. Monroe, we've brought up the archive. Servers from storage as requested. They haven't been powered on in years, so we're running diagnostics now. Thank you, Zariah replied, impressed by the efficiency. This is my brother, Marcus. He'll be helping me. Jenkins raised an eyebrow but nodded. The police have already questioned me about the backup procedures from 16 years ago. They were much simpler then. Weekly full backups, daily incrementals. If your father found something, it would most likely be in a weekly backup. Zariah considered this information. When exactly did my father disappear? Do we know the exact date? A police technician who had been setting up equipment checked his notes. November 17, 2009, was when your mother filed the missing persons report. She stated he had last been seen 2 days earlier. So we're looking at backups from mid-November 2009, Zariah concluded. Let's start there. For the next 2 hours, Zariah and Marcus worked methodically through the old backup files, looking for anything unusual. The system was archaic by current standards, but Zariah quickly adapted, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she navigated through folders and files. This is like digital archaeology, Marcus commented. his natural curiosity temporarily overriding his grief. Some of these file formats are ancient. Zariah smiled slightly, proud of how her brother was handling the pressure. Focus on the finance and project development folders. That's where any irregularities would most likely be. Their breakthrough came just as Cameron joined them, having finished with the board. "Look at this," Marcus said suddenly, pointing to his screen. "There's a hidden directory here, encrypted with a different protocol than the rest of the system." Zariah moved to look over his shoulder. "Good catch. That shouldn't be there, not in a standard backup." The police technician ran a decryption program, but it failed to break through the security. "This is sophisticated for 2009, he noted. "We might need more computing power. Or," Zariah said slowly, "we might just need the right password." She turned to Cameron. "Did your father have any personal phrases or dates he used for security?" Cameron thought for a moment. "He used my mother's birthday for some things. July 15th, 1957. Zariah tried the date in various formats, but the encryption held. "What about Webb? Would your father have used something related to him?" "Possibly," Cameron acknowledged. "They were partners for years before their relationship soured." Marcus spoke up. "What about Mom? If all three of them were partners, maybe the password is something all of them would know." Zariah considered this. "The formation date of Meridian Technologies? When they first became partners?" "April 3rd, 1996, Cameron supplied. "That's when the company was officially registered." Zariah typed in the date, and to everyone's surprise, the directory unlocked, revealing dozens of files. "We're in," she breathed, scanning the contents. "These are financial records, transfer authorizations, and there's a video file." With shaking hands, she clicked on the video. The screen filled with the image of a younger Richard Webb sitting at a desk in what appeared to be an office at ThornTech. "Is this recording?" Webb's voice came through clearly. "Good. The transaction with Seoul Dynamics will proceed as discussed. 5 million transferred through the Cayman account, untraceable back to us. The North Korean officials have confirmed receipt of the prototype. We should have the military contract within the month." Zariah gasped. He was selling technology to North Korea in 2009. "That would have been a serious violation of international sanctions," the police technician said grimly. "Not to mention treason." Cameron looked stunned. "My father would never have approved this. It goes against everything he believed in." "Maybe that's why Webb kept it hidden," Marcus suggested, "and why he was so desperate to silence anyone who found out." They continued through the files, finding more evidence of illegal technology transfers, money laundering, and bribes to foreign officials, all orchestrated by Webb, all hidden from James Thorne. "This is what our father found," Zariah said quietly to Marcus. "This is why Webb had him killed. He knew too much." Cameron placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is enough to put Webb away for the rest of his life, even without finding your father's, without physical evidence." Zariah nodded, tears finally breaking through her composed exterior. "He was protecting us. Mom knew. That's why she accepted the settlement, signed the agreement. To keep us safe from Webb." Marcus moved closer, putting his arm around his sister. "She did what she had to do, just like you've always done for me." The police technician carefully copied all the files, ensuring the chain of evidence remained intact. "This will be more than enough for the prosecutor," he assured them. "Webb won't be able to talk his way out of this." As they prepared to leave the server room, Cameron's phone rang. It was Vanessa. "The board has made their decision," she reported when he answered. "In light of Webb's arrest and the pending investigation, they've unanimously voted to reject his offer and express their full support for your continued leadership." Cameron's relief was palpable. "Thank you, Vanessa, for everything." "Don't thank me yet," she replied. "The media is having a field day with this. We'll need a strong response to control the narrative." "I'll be right up," Cameron promised, ending the call. To Zariah and Marcus, he said, "The board has rejected Webb's offer. ThornTech stays in Thorn hands." "That's good news," Zariah said, managing a small smile despite her emotional exhaustion. "There's going to be a lot of fallout from this," Cameron warned. "For the company, for all of us. Are you prepared for that?" Zariah exchanged a look with her brother, then nodded firmly. We've lived with half-truths and uncertainty for 16 years. Whatever comes next, at least it will be the truth. We'll face it together, Marcus added, his young voice strong with conviction. Cameron smiled at them both, his blue eyes warm with admiration. Together, he agreed. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of police interviews, media coverage, and corporate damage control. Webb remained in custody, denied bail due to the severity of the charges and the risk of flight. The evidence against him was overwhelming, both for his corporate crimes and for his role in Thomas Monroe's disappearance. The search for Thomas's remains continued, with police using the photographs found in Webb's safe to narrow down possible locations. Zariah and Marcus prepared themselves for the possibility that their father might never be found, taking comfort in at least knowing the truth about his disappearance. At Thorntech, Cameron worked tirelessly to stabilize the company, reassuring clients and shareholders that Webb's actions had been his alone. Zariah remained by his side, her technical expertise proving invaluable as they worked to ensure no trace of Webb's illegal activities remained in their systems. 1 month after Webb's arrest, Zariah sat in Cameron's office reviewing the company's updated security protocols. The past weeks had been exhausting, but also cleansing in a way, bringing long-buried truths to light and allowing for a fresh start. "The board approved your promotion," Cameron announced as he entered the office, a smile lighting his tired face. "Congratulations, Chief Technology Officer Monroe." Zariah looked up in surprise. "They approved it, even with everything that's happened." "Especially because of everything that's happened," Cameron corrected her. "You've proven yourself beyond any doubt. The board recognizes that, and so do I." He crossed to where she sat, taking her hands and pulling her gently to her feet. "You saved this company, Zariah, in more ways than one." "We saved it together," she replied, the warmth in his blue eyes making her heart skip. "Yes, we did," Cameron agreed softly. "And I hope we'll continue doing many things together." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Zariah's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "I know it's fast," Cameron said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "And I know we still have a lot to work through, but these past weeks have shown me what's truly important in life. And that's you, Zariah. You and the future we could build together." Tears filled Zariah's eyes as Cameron dropped to one knee. "Zariah Monroe, you walked into my life when I least expected it, but needed it most. You challenged me, supported me, and showed me what real strength looks like. Will you marry me?" For a moment, Zariah was speechless, overwhelmed by the journey that had brought them to this point. From cleaning his office floors to standing beside him as an equal, from strangers to partners in every sense of the word. "Yes," she finally whispered, her voice growing stronger as she repeated, "Yes, Cameron, I will marry you." His face lit up with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to pull her into his arms. Their kiss was tender and promising, a seal on the commitment they had just made. When they broke apart, Zariah laughed softly. "Marcus is going to be insufferable. He told me weeks ago that you were going to propose." "Smart kid," Cameron said with a grin. "I may have asked for his blessing. Seemed like the right thing to do." "And he gave it?" Zariah asked, though she already knew the answer, enthusiastically, along with a warning that if I ever hurt you, he knows enough about computers now to make my life miserable. Zariah laughed again, the sound lighter than it had been in weeks. "That's my brother." Cameron pulled her close again, his expression growing serious. "I know we can't replace what you both lost, but I promise you, Zariah, we'll build something beautiful together. A family, a future." "We already have," she said softly, resting, her head against his chest. "From the moment I picked up that phone on a rainy night, our paths were meant to cross." Outside the office windows, the city stretched out below them, bathed in the golden light of sunset. In the glass reflection, Zariah caught a glimpse of them standing together, the janitor's daughter and the billionaire CEO, an unlikely pair. Brought together by circumstances neither could have predicted, life had taken her on a winding journey, with loss and hardship and unexpected joy. But standing here now in the arms of the man she loved, Zariah finally felt like she had come home, and wherever her father was, she hoped he could see that his sacrifice had not been in vain. His daughter had found her way back to the world he had been forced to leave behind. She had reclaimed her mother's legacy, and she had found love in the most unexpected place, swept into the heart of a man who saw her true worth from the very beginning. 3 months later, on a clear spring morning, Zariah stood in a small private ceremony room, adjusting the simple white dress she had chosen for her wedding day. Marcus waited beside her, handsome in his new suit, ready to walk her down the aisle. "Mom would be so proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Of both of us." Zariah hugged him tightly. "She would be most proud of you, heading to MIT in the fall, just like she did." "With a Thorn Tech scholarship," Marcus added with a grin. "Though Cameron swears I earned it fair and square." "You did," Zariah assured him. "The committee doesn't even know we're related." The music started, signaling it was time. Marcus offered his arm and Zariah took it, her heart full as they prepared to enter the ceremony room, where Cameron waited with their small group of friends and chosen family. Just yesterday, Detective Miller had called with news. They had finally located the remote cabin from Webb's photographs. The search for Thomas Monroe's remains would begin next week. It was a bittersweet development, but Zariah had decided not to postpone the wedding. Life had to move forward, even as they honored the past. As the doors opened, and she saw Cameron, waiting for her, his blue eyes filled with love and promise, Zariah felt a sense of completion. The journey that had begun in darkness, cleaning empty offices, struggling to support her brother, carrying the weight of abandonment, had led her here to this moment of light and hope. Each step down the aisle was a step into their future together. A future built on truth, on resilience, on the belief that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings can lead to the most beautiful destinations. Cameron took her hand as she reached him, his smile warming her from within. "Ready?" he whispered. Zariah nodded, squeezing his hand. "Ready." Together they turned to face the officiant, ready to begin the next chapter of their unexpected, extraordinary love story. The end.